major league loss. St. Louis evens this series at a game apiece. What a night.
That's what it sounded like last night on Bally Sports Midwest as the Cardinals get a huge win on the road in Pittsburgh against Paul Skeens, hand him his first loss as a professional. Last time he lost a game was back when he was playing with the LSU Tigers last year. It's been almost calendar year. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, that had the feel last night of a playoff game. It was a playoff atmosphere in Pittsburgh. They had like 30,000 fans in the stands yesterday. That felt like 2014, 2015 Pirates versus Cardinals type of an atmosphere. It was awesome. It was really cool to see. I'm glad to see Pittsburgh is really buying into this team. They should be buying into this team because that dude is a nightmare to go up against. Paul Skeens is all of the hype, 100% deserved. Weird first start. Ever since then, one of the best pitcher in Major League Baseball, full stop. Just the best dude out there. And the Cardinals found a way to get a couple of runs in the game, and that's all it took because the Pirates' offense stunk. They've got to upgrade that thing. Alex, what did you learn from last night, the way that the Cardinals were able to win that game, in what felt like a playoff type of atmosphere?
I mean, for me, that's the recipe for you winning those types of games. Like, if you look at it, you get a Nolan Arenado home run. We talked about that before, whether he's the big-time offense or he's a complementary piece moving forward. You get the home run by one of those guys. But look at who came through for the Cardinals. It was Alec Burleson. To me, if you're going to have any success in a playoff game, a playoff atmosphere, it's going to come from clutch hitting with guys like Alec Burleson, guys like Mason Wynn, Michael Ciani coming out of nowhere. Like those devil magic plays by Cardinals players, that was the recipe for success. But that was my positive because I don't think people expected me to go negative.
Okay, you can't go negative today.
Well, I can't go negative because that Lance Lynn experience was very difficult.
No,
that was very difficult to think. And, like, I was watching it because I said it yesterday, like, this is a playoff-like series. I don't know if you're winning that game in a playoff situation, but I don't know if Lance Lynn's pitching for you there. I think there are certain areas you still need to make sure you are great at, and it's the bullpen, it's your starting pitching. But offensively, that at least gave me a slight bit of hope to look at it and say, like, man, if you get this Burleson the rest of the season, along with a Mason Wynn and a Wilson Contreras, man, you'll have the offense to come through with some moments, but it's going to come down to your pitching being elite for you.
Yeah. To me, the Lance Lynn experience, we know what it is.
I don't like it.
I don't like it at all.
He gets out of those jams and you feel good about it. He doesn't get out of those jams and you say he gave up 6 earned runs against the Pirates. It was a terrible performance. Like, it is a razor thin margin for what is a good performance versus an unacceptable performance from Lance Lynn. And it happens almost every time that he goes out there, and it's just a matter of does he get enough strikeouts to make up for
I feel like I'm rewatching John
all
Gant.
of the traffic.
That's not that bad.
It's not as bad as John Gant, and he does have a little bit more, like, trust that has been earned because I've seen him get out of those jams before for like the last decade. He has 2,000 strikeouts in his career. Congratulations to Lance Lynn. That is one hell of an accomplishment for him. But it's not particularly appealing to watch. To me, my biggest lesson that I learned last night was the need for a right-handed and left-handed pitcher in the bullpen. I felt like when you saw them go to JoJo Romero in that spot 2 nights ago, they had the exact same type of a situation arise, and they didn't go to JoJo, and they explained it, and we said, we don't believe Ollie Marmol and why he went with somebody else. Last night you saw the results. I understand he didn't get hit super hard. The problem with JoJo Romero is that he doesn't have the swing and miss stuff that he did earlier in the season. And if he doesn't have that, he lacks the ability to be the high-leverage reliever that we were excited about him as earlier in the season. So the Cardinals have multiple needs in the bullpen right now. And maybe it's one need of just a superstar performer that doesn't have real splits, and you could put him in the back end of the pen with Fernandez and Kittredge and Helsley, and that's the 4-headed monster that you've got. But right now they lack both a right-handed and a left-handed option that can be pieced together with those other 3 names I just mentioned.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think my biggest takeaways were on the pitching side because, look, I know that's a playoff-type game last night against a team that's in the race, but you're going to need even better pitching when you get to the playoffs because you're not going to see a team that's the Pirates' offense. The Pirates' offense is like yours. It's not good enough. And I think when you get to the playoffs and you're going to be facing, whether it be the Braves, the Padres, the Diamondbacks, which have an unbelievable offense if they find a way in, the Brewers, the Dodgers, whoever you play in the playoffs, Those offenses are better than Pittsburgh's. So you're going to have great pitching, which means you have to upgrade to your point on Lance Lynn of, hey, you got to have guys that are better than him, which I hope and expect that they're going to do. You look at their bullpen, they clearly have two holes right now. They need a right-handed arm, and they need a left-handed arm in a really bad way. Those were the two things that I saw as, okay, that's what they need to be their formula, because they did the little thing we talked about. They slugged last night. Now, they didn't do a lot of it, but they did enough to win. They had a home run for a run and a double that leads to where they can get a single to score that run. And they hit in the clutch with Alec Burleson late. Like that was the formula of how they're going to win in October. But they've got to improve because Pittsburgh Pirates are like that very low bar of what a playoff team is.
Something's going to have to be elite, whether it's your offense or your pitching.
Yeah. That's what this team is.
The only thing it's going to do.
Like this offense is not good enough against the best pitching that they're going to see, and most offenses aren't, but this definitely isn't, to be able to go up against a guy like Paul Skeens, or to go up against even a Charlie Morton, or a Zach Wheeler, or an Aaron Nola, and Tyler Glasnow, whoever it is. These are the pitchers you're going to see in the postseason and put up 6 runs, 4 runs, 5 runs consistently. This is not who they are, and that's okay. A lot of teams aren't going to be that way in the postseason, but what that means is you got to be able to match them with your pitching. And the Cardinals' rotation is not going to go 1-for-1 against the Phillies. It's not going to go 1-for-1 against whatever the Dodgers' rotation ends up looking like by the end of the year. This is not what it's going to look like by the end of the season. They're going to add to it. So what you have to do is you've got to make sure that bullpen is amazing. You've got to make sure your defense is on point. And you've got to fight and get clutch hitting and find a way to win. And, man, credit where it is due. The Cardinals scratch and claw with the best of them.
Schiltbeck?
I hate sounding this cliche, and you guys know I don't know how much of a skill this is because it is so incredibly difficult to find any sort of historical precedent for a team that consistently wins this way. It's hard as hell.
Oh, the Marlins were on a wait.
But they have found a way so far to be able to do exactly that. And Alec Burleson's as clutch of a hitter in big-time situations as this team has had since, like, Alan Craig. And Mason Wynn just seems to do all of the little things well at the plate. Last night, being able to come through with a guy on first, you got to move him, or a guy on second, you got to move him over. The 2 bunts can't but get him down, and then finds a way to essentially swing for a bunt, move the runner over, and then you've got Alec Burleson with the single. Like, they just do those things really well. It seems like they buy time, get late into the innings, be close, and then boom, find a way to win. It didn't work for them on Monday, and that's the downside of the way that they play. But last night they come through in those situations. It's hard. It's very difficult to sustain this kind of a way of winning. But they've been finding ways to do it, man. And I'll give them credit where it's due. Last night was a lot of fun. That was one of the best wins that they've had so far this season in terms of the meaningful win against a playoff opponent, team that's trying to fight for a spot that you're in right now. And you were well outmatched in terms of pitching. Going up against Paul Skeens, who might be the best pitcher in baseball right now, and you had your 4th or 5th best starter on the mound. Good job, Cards. That's a good win last night, man. Credit where it's due. They deserve it for that win last night.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that has been very evident about this Cardinals team is whether they're behind or up by a run or 2 runs, more times than not, I trust that team's going to win, because last season it was they're going to lose this game somehow. This season it's been if they're down by a run, they'll come back. They'll find a way to at least make it a tie baseball game like they did late in the game last night. Or when they're up, you look at it and you say they're going to find a way to close it down. So it's just a matter of holding on to the wins, and I feel very confident about that. The problem for the Cardinals team this season has been if they lose the game early in the game. If they lose it in the first 3 innings, we saw it against the Phillies. Most of the time it's when Lance Lynn takes them out. But if they get 4 or 5 runs up within the first 3 or 4 innings, that's when I look at it and say, okay, this team's not coming back.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, this year's team, I never feel like they allow that knockout blow against them, but they never have the knockout blow as well. You know, they never get put away very often early, unless it is kind of like what you're talking about where you have that blow-up inning from a starter, but they never find a way to pull away from anybody either, and it's why they have so many close one-run games. Can I give you one concern, though?
Before, to that point on how they score, how they win, and then I do want to hear what you had as your another point. Last night was the 30th time this season that the Cardinals have failed to score in the first 4 innings of the game. They are now 10 and 20 in those games this season.
When they don't score
when
in the
they
first
do not
2 runs?
score in the first 4 innings. I bet you that's one of the best records in baseball when you don't score in the first 4 innings.
And
it's incredibly hard to win those kinds of. The fact that the Cardinals have done it 10 times is pretty amazing.
And I would imagine a lot of those 20 losses where they were down by 4 or 5 runs. Like, it wasn't they gave up 1 run and it was close. Most of the time it's they're getting berated in the first 3 or 4 innings and they don't have the offense to come back in that scenario.
Yeah. And the other thing that I want to bring up here, and I hate to have one that is a negative point, but it is something that I am kind of keeping an eye on, and it's where managers get judged best. I thought that was a B- game from Oli Marmol last night. I thought you saw him second guessing when he went back to Jojo Romero. When he didn't do it the night prior, he goes to him there, and he had the weird moment in, I think it was the 7th inning, where they pinch hit for, I don't remember who it was that was at the plate against John King. They pinch hit for Connor Joe, and he immediately doesn't go to Andrew Kittredge in that spot, but he goes to him a batter later after the Connor Joe single, which means Kittredge, if he has to face the 3-batter minimum, suddenly goes against Brian Reynolds from the left side, the side that he struggles with. I don't know. I like what Oli Marmol's done for the most part this season. I've questioned some of his pulling of starters early on in games. Last night was a B- performance for me in a playoff-type game, which is something that I will be keeping an eye on.
You mentioned this before the show, so I want to credit where it's due. T-Bone was the one that originally thought of this, but I wonder if some of that had to do with how they want to play their bullpen today.
I wonder.
They were holding guys back to just have as many bullets as they possibly can for today's bullpen game, where they've got Matthew Liberatore on the mound. For Tanner Hendrickson and Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. By the way, last thing on this, and we'll get to Jim Bowden, former Major League Baseball general manager, on the other side. I loved the fact that we got it, because for baseball theater, it made for a better and more enjoyable watching experience. I think they made a mistake, the Pirates did, in allowing Paul Skeens to stay in the game to face Alec Burleson. For me, as a baseball viewer and for somebody that's rooting from the Cardinal side of things, great theater to be able to watch. Reminded me of the World Baseball Classic, not to the same degree, of course, but seeing Shohei Ohtani on the mound going up against Mike Trout, you're like, this is what it should have always came down to. Last night, it should have always came down to Paul Skeens against Alec Burleson. That's what it felt like for that moment. We needed that as a baseball watching community. That being said, if I was a Pirates fan and this requires Aroldis Chapman being available, and I don't know if he was last night, but if Aroldis Chapman was available, that you got to go to him. You got to go to him in that spot. He gives you the best chance to win, despite the fact that Paul Skeens was amazing last night. The last couple of guys, lefties, that were going up against him, 100-mile-an-hour flyout for Gorman, and then the 101-mile-per-hour double for Siani. Lefties were starting to get to him a little bit. It was time to go to Aroldis Chapman. They decided not to do that. Cardinals win. Coming up next, Jim Bowden here on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by a former Major League Baseball general manager. He's now an analyst for the Athletic, CBS Sports, and you hear him on MLB Network Radio. He is, of course, Jim Bowden, joining the show here on 101 ESPN. Jim, we always appreciate the time, man. Cardinals 5 games above 500 the week before the trade deadline. Let's start with the obvious here. How are you assessing this team the week prior to the deadline?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that Oli Marmol's done a great job of managing this team. I think he's overachieved with it, but they're in a position to make the playoffs. And we have a lot of parity right now in the National League. We really only legitimately have 2 teams, the Marlins and the Rockies, who don't have a shot to get in. So St. Louis has a chance to get in. And one thing's for sure, the president of the team, John Mozeliak, is out there trying to add another veteran starting pitcher to try to enhance their chances of getting there. But there's no doubt that St. Louis has put themselves in position to make a run here and perhaps be a postseason team.
Jim, what are you hearing about the trade deadline? Because there still are so many teams that probably feel like they have a shot of getting into the playoffs, which I would imagine makes this deadline a little more interesting.
Well, it's a seller's market, of course. I mean, in the National League, you have the Marlins and Rockies that are selling, and then you have teams like the Chicago Cubs, the San Francisco Giants that are kind of in between here, but they're open to selling as well, which could be interesting, especially because the Cubs have Jameson Taillon and the Giants have Blake Snell that they could move if they decide to. So they're kind of the 2 wild card teams, not for the playoffs, but wild card teams in terms of the trade deadline. And over in the American League, you've got the Toronto Blue Jays, you've got the Chicago White Sox, who are the headliners of this particular deadline. You've got the Angels, A's that are selling as well, so there's a little more sellers there in the American League. But it is a seller's market without any question. And so if you're a contending team, there are enough players out there to go get what you need to try to push your team over the top. I think we'll see some buyers for buyers type of trades. I think you'll see teams like the Tampa Bay Rays that are going to go both ways. They're going to buy and they're going to sell. And I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how this thing plays out. You
mentioned the Blue Jays. They're one of the teams that kind of controls this deadline depending on how much they want to sell, Jim. When you look at their controllable pitching, do you believe, is it your assessment based on what they're telling other teams around the market, what you're hearing from everybody, are they willing to listen on some of their controllable starters?
They'll listen, sure. I think their number one goal, though, is they want to trade the guys that are going to be free agents first. So they're focusing on Yusei Kikuchi. They're focusing on Jimmy Garcia. They're focusing on Chad Green. That's what the GMs are telling me that are talking to Toronto. But if you want to call and ask about Chris Bassett, you want to call and ask about Kevin Gausman, they have to listen. Look, they're 15 games out in the division. They're 10 games out in the wild card. They don't have a strong farm system. They only have 2 position players that profile into star players. They have a lot of work to do to become relevant again. They have to listen on everybody.
I feel like Yusei Kikuchi is a guy that gets connected a lot to the Cardinals, Jim. As an evaluator, how do you view him? Where should he slot into a playoff rotation if you're a legitimate contender?
I say he's a 4th starter is where he is, somewhere in there. He's got command and control issues. He's got pretty good stuff. He's really inconsistent. But he's a veteran guy that's been out there, and I know that's one thing St. Louis is looking for. When I've heard the names connected to the Cardinals, the names I hear the most are Zach Eflin, Eric Fetty, Yusei Kikuchi, Cal Quantrill, Austin Gomber, who was once a Cardinal. Interesting, I don't hear Flaherty, which I'm not sure I understand why. I think a reunion would be phenomenal because he's pitching like he did in his prime with St. Louis. I think he'd be the perfect fit, but I don't know if there was a bridge that was burned or something there. And I know the Cardinals have actually talked to the White Sox about Crochet too, but I don't really see that happening based on the competition for him. But they have been connected to him too. So one thing's for sure that we all know John Mozeliak, and over the years he doesn't make a lot of trades, but he does identify specific needs and normally does fill that. So I'll be surprised if he doesn't add a veteran starter just because he's working so hard to get one.
Jim, from your perspective, what's the route to go if you're John Mozeliak? Like how high are you looking up in terms of the profile of player as a starting pitcher? Or is there more than just a starting pitcher if this team needs to contend?
Well, I mean, if you ask in my opinion, I think probably the same as John, which is, can I have Scooble or Crochet, please, or both? I mean, that's what I want.
For free, preferably, right?
We'll give you prospects.
Yeah, right? I would empty my farm system for those guys myself. I wouldn't look at the farm system and think I had anybody in the St. Louis farm system that would prevent me from getting one of those guys if I could match up with them. because you need an ace and you want to win a world championship. St. Louis fans know better than ever. You know, you got to look at Adam Wainwright or Chris Carpenter. I mean, you guys know how to do it. You've done it. You need that ace. You don't have it. You need it. So, I would pay that price. I think it's unrealistic to think that way based on what we're hearing out there, but it is realistic to be able to get some of these other guys we just mentioned.
Jim, I don't think they're going to get an ace, but Nate Eovaldi has kind of been that for teams in the postseason in recent seasons. What are you hearing on the Rangers and their willingness to sell some of the guys that are potentially going to be free agents after the season?
Yeah, I was told they're not selling. I had a conversation with an executive with them yesterday. I hear they're buying. They feel they can get in. What are they, 3 games out right now? I mean, they're right in the middle of the race. They're not going anywhere. Chris Young is not going to throw the towel in, and neither is Bruce Bochy. Bruce Bochy hasn't won all those world championships and then turn around and sell on a team like this that's underachieved and is about to get Tyler Mahle and Jacob deGrom back. That would be the most absurd thing we could ever hear. So sometimes these rumors get out there, and then they circulate, and then everybody talks about the same thing over and over again. The only thing I try to do in my job here is I talk to the front offices directly. I get my information directly from them. I don't pay attention to the noise outside. I don't read other people. I don't listen to other people because there's so much garbage that goes on out there, it becomes annoying.
That's the trade deadline for you. It's garbage season more than anything, right, Jim?
It is. I mean, people make stuff up all the time because they want to be a headline or something. I just work in facts, and I just try to, the best I can, represent the truth of what's going on in the 30 front offices to the fans.
So, Jim, we've talked a lot about the Cardinals trade deadline, as you would imagine, and, of course, starting pitching is the one thing, but then we've gone down the rabbit hole of saying, like, this team might need to find a way to get a right-handed and a left-handed reliever for their bullpen. Are there going to be a lot of those guys available at this deadline?
Oh, there's a bunch, yeah. And look, every team needs a reliever. Maybe not the Guardians. Let's give the Guardians a pass and say they're the only team that doesn't. Actually, I can include the Reds in that, too, who will actually trade some of their relievers because they got some guys coming back off the IL. But besides that, every other team needs relievers. And sure, but you got to understand, look at the price Kansas City paid to get Hunter Harvey. Like, I almost fell off my chair. Pick 39 and your second-best prospect for Hunter Harvey? Are you kidding me? But that's what the market dictates, and they're asking for a lot. But, the Angels have Carlos Estevez. They'll trade. The Rays have Peter Fairbanks. They'll trade. The Marlins are going to trade Tanner Scott. The Nationals probably are going to trade Kyle Finnegan. I mean, they're all out there. They're shopping them. I don't think Mason Miller is going to get moved like everyone else is putting out there. I'm not getting any indication from Oakland that they're going to move him. Not that they won't listen on him, but I don't think he's going to get moved based on what I'm hearing from them. But, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of relievers out there. Sure, there could be a lot moved. I mean, you just talked about Toronto. I mean, Yimi Garcia and Chad Green are both having great years. Teams want them as well. So, yeah, there's lots of relievers out there, and if you're a contending team, you better get the bullpen, right? Because starters are going to get tired in August and September, and pennants are going to be won in innings 6 and 7. So you better make sure your inning 6 and 7 is better than theirs.
Jim Bowden is our guest for another couple of minutes here on 101 ESPN, former Major League Baseball general manager. Now you can read his work at The Athletic, see him on CBS Sports, and hear him on MLB Network Radio. He's all over for you. He does fantastic work. Jim, you did mention Eric Fetty a little while ago, and he's been on the tops of minds for Cardinals fans for quite a while now. $7.5 million next year, reasonable price for him. He's having a very good season. The question that a lot of Cardinals fans have, though, is he was a really bad starter prior to going overseas, and now he appears to be fixed. Do you believe in what we're seeing from him this year? Is this a real, tangible change for Fetty, or is this a flash in the pan?
Well, I'm going to believe what I'm watching. There's no reason to believe I don't. And the one thing, just being in the game as long as I've been, which is a lifetime, a lot of times guys will go overseas and they'll figure something out they didn't understand here. Right? They'll understand I don't have to throw as hard as I possibly can. They'll understand how changing speeds and changing eye levels is so important. When you're a number one pick, everybody had all those high expectations of what you're going to be. Then you didn't live up to it. And then we walk over to our analytics department and we ask them once again, what is the prime years for a pitcher? And they'll tell you 26 to 30. Right. And so, there's just so many factors. Guys all of a sudden turn the table, and it happens. And it happens whether it be physical maturity, intellectual maturity, emotional maturity, just all of a sudden figuring out how to do it. And watching Eric Fetty this year, I think he's figured out how to do it. So I don't see any reason why he can't do what he's done so far for the rest of this year and next year. Now, that being said, if he was a free agent and you asked me that question, no, I wouldn't give him a 4-year or 5-year contract.
Sure.
I don't think that would end well. But if you're asking me, would I do a year and a half of Fetty and make a painful deal of a couple of my really good prospects in A-ball, if I could land them on a team that I have that might make the postseason, knowing that the way we have now structured the postseason, if you win 100 games and you're the best, one of the best teams in your league, you have to sit 5 days and are probably going to lose in your first series. And that the World Series is more likely to have 2 wild card teams and the 2 best teams like last year when we saw the Diamondbacks and Rangers. So if I get in, I got a chance. Yeah, I'd probably make that trade for Fetty.
Jim, final question for you. We'll get you out of here on this. The last time we had you on, the Cardinals were in the midst of a hot streak, and there were questions, and you questioned, and it was reasonable at the time. A lot of people wondered, are they going to have any kind of staying power? As you're watching them right now and you think about what they could potentially add at the deadline, does this team have staying power? Do they have a real chance to do what you just said and be a legitimate contender in October as a wild card team?
When I was on with you last time, I told you guys the Cardinals are not a playoff team. I'm going to come on again today and tell you they are not a playoff team. However, I have been impressed how they have played, and I've been really unimpressed about the National League in general. And so we have real parity where, yes, you have a chance to win. But in my opinion, and certainly I don't have all the answers, and I don't have the crystal ball either, I probably think the Cardinals are going to finish in 3rd place and outside of the wild card right now. But let's see what they do next week, and I may change my opinion, but my opinion really hasn't changed. I'm not trying to be mean. I root for St. Louis. I love the Cardinals. I said this when I was a GM. There was never a better fan base than when I would walk into Busch Stadium. Never fans that were more intelligent ever than what there is in St. Louis. So I actually have a soft spot in my heart for the franchise. I root for the franchise. But you asked me, you put me on the radio, you want me to tell you what I think? I just told you.
Jim Bowden, one of the best in the business. We always appreciate his time here on BK and Ferrario, especially when he's as busy as he is going into the week of the Major League Baseball trade deadline. Jim, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep, that's Jim Bowden joining us here on 101 ESPN. Always appreciate his time. Hey, man, he's honest. And that's what I appreciate about him. He comes on, he's going to give you his legitimate opinion on where your team is at right now. You don't have to agree with him. That's totally fine. I say a bunch of stuff here on the radio that I would imagine the vast majority of you disagree with. That's what sports are supposed to be for. That's what this is all about, right? We can disagree on things, have some fun with it, move on, and go forward from there. Eventually, one of us is going to be proven right? Either Jim's going to be right, they're going to miss the playoffs, and we're all going to be pretty damn upset here in St. Louis, or he's going to be dead ass wrong, and we're going to call him, and he's going to say, I was wrong. And that's what's fun about this. Alex, I do want to get into some of what he just said there. I thought one thing that he said about the postseason being won, a pennant being won in the 6th and 7th inning, particularly interesting. How do the Cardinals become the team that can do that? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley for our friends at Circus Sports in Illinois. Alex, people need to be downloading this app today. The reason why is because you're going to win the most money possible when you're betting with Circus Sports. I'm going over there to place all of my NFL futures bets right now. If you want to bet on somebody to win the MVP, there's no better place to do it, especially if you want one of the top contenders, than over on Circus Sports. Patrick Mahomes right now to win MVP on Circa, 6-1. If you make that exact same bet over on FanDuel, it's 5-1. You want to bet on Josh Allen to win MVP. These are the top two contenders, right? Josh Allen, 10-1 on Circa, 8-1 odds over on FanDuel. You want to bet on one of the favorites, the place to do it is over on Circa. If you want a long shot bet, my favorite to do so over on Circa, Aaron Rodgers, 27-1 there, 25-1 on FanDuel.
Yeah, you know me, I'm going to back my Lions team, and they've got better odds on Circa Sports than both FanDuel and DraftKings, so make sure you're checking out these futures bets before the NFL season kicks off. Tight money line splits always at Circa Sports, so you're bringing in the most money possible for those daily baseball games if you're getting in on. Download the app today. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Tara Hendricks Near They Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Pirates yesterday 2-1, and Game 3 of their 3-game set at Pittsburgh is getting ready to start. Martin Perez will get the start for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Cardinals going with a bullpen game today as Matthew Liberatore will be on the mound for St. Louis. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
If you're a contending team, you better get the bullpen, right? Because starters are going to get tired in August and September, and pennants are going to be won in innings 6 and 7. So you better make sure your inning 6 and 7 is better than theirs.
That was Jim Bowden, who joined us a moment ago here on BK and Ferrario with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. If you missed any of that conversation with Jim Bowden, the former Major League Baseball general manager, be sure to check that out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Alex, I thought that was interesting that he said the pennant is going to be won in the 6th and the 7th inning, because that's really where you get to the underbelly of a bullpen, right? 5 innings for your starter. Most teams have the 8th and the 9th inning locked down. It's about what your value is from the bullpen for the 6th and the 7th inning. And when you go back-to-back days or 3 out of 4 days, who can be pitching in those innings for you? Can you lock those innings down? If the answer is no, you're going to lose. You're going to lose those games because that's potentially the 3rd time through the order. That is where pennants are won, according to Jim Bowden. I think it's a really good point, and last night we saw an example of that. Last night, we saw the underbelly of this Cardinals' current bullpen is not good enough to be able to win a pennant in those innings. In my opinion, that's where you've got to upgrade. That's where the necessity for the Cardinals at the deadline, if they're looking at guys like Cal Quantrill, Austin Gomber, and Zach Eflin, forget that. I'm not interested in those guys, honestly. Just go out there and get another bullpen arm in lieu of one of those players. Whoever you're giving up for those players, just repurpose that package for a better bullpen arm. Or go get multiple bullpen arms. That's what I would rather see the Cardinals do. I don't think you can get through October with a rotation that includes Sonny Gray, Kyle Gibson, Miles Michaelis, Lance Lynn. / Andre Palante. I don't think you can. But the best way to do so is to go get more bullpen arms as opposed to going out there and replacing one of those guys with a Cal Quantrill. That does nothing for me. That doesn't upgrade you in a meaningful way. A bullpen arm potentially can.
I agree with you in that sentiment. Like, I believe that you need to lock down 6 through 9, and with the uncertainty of JoJo Romero, and I think some of that gets helped when you take Matthew Liberatore out of this like weird murky middle and just put him as a high leverage arm, and you've got Andrew Kittredge, who hopefully is better. My only concern with just doing that, though, is I don't know if the 6th and 7th innings matter if you give up the runs in 1 through 5. And your
Totally
offense,
fair.
if you're down by 3 runs by the time you get to the 6th inning, and let's say it's 3-0 or 4-1, I don't trust that offense to come back against another team's lethal bullpen. So if you're telling me that one of those games, I only have to rely on Kyle Gibson or Miles Michaelis, I'm a lot more on board with that if my bullpen is locked down, which is why it always has felt like you can go get a starting pitcher, but you also have to upgrade that bullpen. You can go get a high leverage, one of the better arms out there, but you still got to improve your starting rotation because it always comes back to this offense. I don't trust your offense to stay competitive against a team unless you have elite pitching.
Yeah, I'm 100% in line there with Alex of, yes, you need to add to this bullpen, but you also have to make sure you can survive through the first 5 innings and the game doesn't get away from you. Because what you saw last night where the Cardinals only allow 1 to Pittsburgh, playoffs they're probably going to allow 3 because they're going to go up against better offense. They're probably going to allow 3 runs, but they've got to be able to prevent that 4th run from coming across. It's going to be a race to 4 when you get to October in these baseball games. So how do you do that if you're the Cardinals? I think it's what you said in the first segment, PK. I think it's run prevention. Got to add a guy that can slot in at number 2. I'm with you. I don't think Quantrill. I don't think Gomber. I don't think Eflin are those guys. I think their target should be Fetty. I think it's coming down to Eric Fetty is probably their number 1 target.
Or try and get one of those controllable guys from Toronto.
Exactly. And I think because they've had this issue now on the left side of their bullpen and the identity of this team is pitching, which I can't believe I'm saying, I think they are no longer and should probably no longer be in the market for a right-handed bat. I think they need to focus on we need a right-handed reliever, we need a left-handed reliever, and we need a starting pitcher that starts game 2 for us.
I really think you can erase this left-handed reliever if you would just go get a starting pitcher and put Matthew Liberatore in that role. Like, I trust Matthew Liberatore to be a high-leverage left-handed reliever if they would just stop this going back and forth with it.
They clearly don't, though, and that makes me nervous. Like, their usage with Matthew Liberatore tells me they don't believe that he is best utilized in that role, right or wrong. And if they don't trust him in that capacity, then you got to go get somebody that you can. You know, so that's kind of where I'm at, is go get 2 relievers. If you're looking at Quantrill, Gomber, or Eflin, I just would rather them not. Like, just don't go do that. Don't go trade for one of those pitchers when they're just. I would rather have Andre Palante starting a playoff game than any of those 3 names that I just mentioned. Now, if you want to get Kikuchi, I think that's an upgrade over Lynn and Palante at a minimum, and probably over Michaelis as well. He's probably your 3rd best starter in this rotation. You could argue 2nd best over Gibson. I could go one way or the other with that.
I think Palante is an upgrade over Michaelis right now.
I tend to agree, but I don't think that they're going to keep them in the rotation. Right, wrong, and different. Eric Fetty is the one guy on this list that Jim Bowden just gave us of Fetty, Quantrill, Gomber, Kikuchi, and Eflin that I look at and I'm like, yeah, that's a clear, definitive, no doubt about it, upgrade over what you have. He starts a game 2. He doesn't have a ton of swing and miss, but he's been good. He's got a sweeper that he added. His 4-seam fastball is playing up. I think it's the 4-seam, if I'm not mistaken. His fastball has been one of the most effective pitches in baseball so far this year. Eric Fetty is the guy from that list. I also thought it was newsworthy that he said, based on everything he's heard, the Rangers are not selling.
Yeah, so
they're 3 games back in the division in the AL West right now. They're playing better baseball. They've got one of the softest schedules in the American League in the second half. They've got a bunch of dudes that are coming off of the injured list. They've got a manager that's at the back end of his career. They've got a general manager that's been aggressive. They are paying the luxury tax this year, so that's not typically something that you want to just, not make the playoffs when you're paying into the tax. That is worth noting, because if Eovaldi is not an option for the Cardinals and for anybody else, now you look at the top starters on the market, they're going to be worth even more just by virtue of there not being the starters from the Rangers that are becoming available. Supply and demand, man. That's what it all comes back down to this time of the year. Fetty's like the one guy that I can really point to and be like, yeah, that works. I want him. That makes you better. And if you can't get him, if the Brewers come in with a massive deal, the Dodgers come in with a massive deal, Preller comes in and he's like, I'm AJ Preller, I'm going to do something crazy. Get real wacky at the deadline.
Frisky today.
There's nothing you can do. And then I would say, like, I think their pivot, if they can't get the starter they need, is just to load up this bullpen like crazy, man. And just say the way that we win in the playoffs is, man, we're going to nickel and dime you to death in the back end of the bullpen. You get to the 5th inning, you get against our bullpen, you're not scoring. And we've got a defense that can win. I would then, if you can't get the starter, go get one of the right-handed bats that we've been talking about. Like, I would be really trying to upgrade that because now the offense becomes even more important. So I think that's the move. I think if you can get Fetty or Kikuchi, somebody on that level, go do it. If you can't, if-then statement, if you can't get those guys, now you pivot to multiple arms and a right-handed bat. That's kind of the way that I would be approaching this deadline based on what we just heard from Jim Bowden. The way you approach today's game, Alex, I'm curious. Cardinals getting ready to face off against the Pirates in the rubber match between the Cardinals and the Pirates today. They've got a bullpen game going with Matthew Liberatore on the mound. How are you approaching this? You mentioned him as a high-leverage reliever. Today he's a starter.
Yeah.
How long are you leaving him in?
I mean, I think I got to get 4 innings out of Matthew Liberatore today. I mean, it seems like almost everybody would be available for me out of my bullpen. I don't think anybody's off limits for how they've gone these last couple
John
of games.
King, I bet, is off limits.
King?
Yeah, he's probably the only one, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got your guys that you need to keep it close. I think if this thing gets ugly, then obviously you can go a different direction if you've got a bullpen ready to go. But I think you're going to really need 3 to 4 innings out of Liberatore because you got the day off tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And then you come for a series, so you get the rest that's going to be needed. You need it to be competitive more than anything because, man, if you lose this game today, now you're talking about them being a half a game behind you. And now I think things get a lot more stressful if you're the Cardinals because of what Jim Bowden had just said. And I know there's plenty of season left, but you're going to need 3 to 4.
Yeah, I think your hope is you go 60, 75 pitches, can get about 4 innings. And then I don't know how you really bridge it to Fernandez, though. And that's, again, to why we keep saying, like, they've got to add to their bullpen. My guess is they're probably, because they clearly
Today's
don't trust.
Geo Day, baby.
This
has Geo multiple innings written all
the
over
funny thing
it.
is-
An offensive day then, too.
I think the funny thing is like, the only way I'm saying it's a Geo Day is if it's the scenario where Alex said where it doesn't go to plan. I don't think they're going to go to G. If this game's close, they're winning by 1 or 2.
Fernandez for 2, Roy Croft
Yeah,
for multiple, Kittredge for 1 1/3.
My guess is it would be this is probably
JoJo in a lefty lane, and boom, we're
This is
boy.
my guess
You
as
scoring
to how
7 runs today?
This is how I
boy.
think they've drawn it up. Liberatore for 4, Roy Croft for an inning. That gets you through 5, and then you go Fernandez 6, 7, and then hopefully in the 8th you get Kittredge, and the 9th you get
One thing
Elsley.
about Ali is
That's
if it's
probably
scripted
how
out, he's
they
going to
drew
go
that.
by it.
Yeah, that's probably their hope, is that's about how it goes. 4 from Liberatore. Pray that Roy Croft has his
Man,
stuff
they loaded
today.
this bad boy up with righties, I'll tell you that much.
Good for
Wouldn't
them.
you?
They should have.
Absolutely. Gonna be interesting, man. They need a good start out of Matthew Liberatore today, to put it mildly. All right, he's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. If you missed our conversation with Jim Bowden, thought it was worth your time, 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app is where you can go to find it after the show today. It's presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Coming up next, questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. That's questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. All right, this one comes from the 615. Guys, why do you think there's overhype on Brendan Donovan? In my opinion, he's basically Stephen Piscotty 2.0. Hard to disagree because he's done it for a little longer than Piscotty did. I also think
have you seen that hair?
The versatility is a big part of this. Versatility matters. The on-base percentage matters. Also, Stephen Piscotty was miscast. He was put into a role, and unfortunately, Brendan Donovan is right now as well, which is the cleanup hitter. I think if Piscotty was on the team right now as opposed to the teams that he was on, where he's got more middle-of-the-order types of hitters, we'd remember Stephen Piscotty more fondly than we currently do. Also, just the way that it ended, man. Mentally, when his mom was going through what she was back home, I think that took a significant toll on him, and I've always wondered what his career would have looked like had that not happened.
Yeah.
I don't think it's overhype on Donovan. I think people properly rate Brendan Donovan for what he is.
I mean, look at the team's record when Brendan Donovan plays versus when he doesn't play. And I know that seems really simple, but I used to do that with Jaden Schwartz all the time. People would be like, oh, Schwartz isn't as good as people make him be. But look at the record when he's in the lineup versus when he's not in the lineup. And I think the same can be said about Brendan Donovan. You saw the team crumble last year when he left, and I know the team was already bad, but it got significantly worse once Brendan Donovan disappeared.
I actually think Donovan's a little underrated. Nationally, and I think from the Cardinals fan base, because I think he's got the best batter's eye on the team, which is why you see his on base can be up to that 365 or in his rookie year 394 when he finished third in rookie of the year voting. And I think his power slipped on. I never thought he'd be a guy that would be a 15 home run hitter. I think he's a 15 to 20 home run guy. He's got underrated power. He's got a great batter's eye. He shouldn't hit cleanup for a team. That certainly is the case. He's a perfect leadoff hitter, though.
Yeah.
Because his struggles, I don't remember when we talked about this. I think it was early on in the year. His struggles are different. When he's not hitting for average, he's still getting on base.
It's amazing.
And you bring in the versatility. I think he's an underrated player. I'm not saying he's a all-star or a superstar by any means. I think he's a really good player that is undervalued and underrated across Major League Baseball.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. This one comes from the 314. Guys, what would make you emotional for a sports team victory or championship? They say that I would get emotional again if the Cardinals could win in my son's lifetime, so that way we could share that moment together. The biggest thing that would make me emotional is if Mizzou was actually able to get over the top, because I've just never seen it. I've seen Missouri get to the Big 12 championship game and lose. I've seen them get to the SEC championship game multiple times and lose. They've been a game away from playing for a title, and they've never been able to actually get over that hump in my lifetime. And so for me, that would be the thing that would do it for me. This football season, it's part of what gives me so much hope, so much belief, so much optimism, so much excitement about it.
Does this make me a bad guy that now I'm rooting for Mizzou not to get there so I could see BK get emotional the other way? Am I a bad guy?
I don't get as emotional on the negative side of things anymore just because we do this for a living.
We're broken.
Yeah.
Very true, man.
Once you see how the sausage is made, it kind of takes away some of that fandom. I still have that in me. I still love watching sports, but it's a little different.
These last couple of years, Katie, because she knows I've always been a big Blues fan, these last couple of years when the Blues have stunk, she's been like, "Are you okay?" It's like a bad team. Yeah, I'm fine. 10 years ago, I would have been broken, but no, this team's broken me. I got all my emotion out in 2019 when the Blues won the Cup, because that's what I grew up with, and I was FaceTiming my dad in Boston on the ice, so that emotion was taken out of me in that one. But now that I have kids, I have a feeling that if they were to do it again, that's where the emotion would come back, because it's tied so much to the Blues and just me growing up.
I think the only one for me would be if I saw not Illinois football get over the hump. I might cry.
No,
with
Illinois basketball can't either.
It would be Illinois basketball probably for me, because I saw the Rams win a Super Bowl while I was a fan of the Rams, so now it wouldn't be different for me. And same with the Cardinals and Blues. And now I'm not so much a fan as it is what you guys are describing now. It's kind of work, so I don't get emotional over anything. The only sport that I still have that I am a true fan, live and die by, is Illinois basketball. And that's probably the one that if they were able to win the title.
You hate your team until you love your team, and then you hate them again once they lose again.
You are a fair weather Illinois fan.
Yeah, I think he's just a fan. I'd get emotional if they won a title. Yeah, I watch every game. It's I lock in on them from the moment they start, and I go through the ebbs and flows, especially during the Coleman Hawkins era.
Oh, yeah. What a year that was.
Congratulations Congratulations, K-State. Enjoy that. All right,
Yeah.
from the 314, my question is, do you guys want to tell Jim Bowden that he's full of poo, even though you respect his resume and years of baseball, based on the fact that he's talking crap on the Cardinals? They're a playoff team. What did you guys think
Tell
of that?
me you're a Cardinals fan without telling me you're a Cardinals fan.
I'm glad you still got your emotion, Dexter.
I can't tell him he's full of poo because part of me believes what Jim Bowden just said. Part of me believes they fall out of this wild card race.
I always like getting people on from the other perspective. Like whatever I believe, whether that's on the Blues and like we're in on them or we're out on them, and somebody comes out with like a super optimistic lens of why we should believe in the Blues. Like I like hearing the other side to find out like, okay, where are the holes in my argument? What am I missing here? Why might I be wrong about this, good or bad? And so I like hearing that from Jim Bowden. It's something that I think we need more of, and that's not just in sports, I think in politics. Like when I'm, whatever lane you're in, I like watching the other side to be able to hear like, okay, what's the other argument here, right? Am I missing something here? So for sports, that is absolutely something that I value. And so hearing that from Jim Bowden, the dude's been in it. Whether you like him, hate him, feel somewhere indifferent, he's been in charge of teams. He's seen a lot of baseball. And so I value his perspective. And when he tells us that he doesn't view the Cardinals as a playoff team, it's something that I at least consider. I disagree with him. I think they are a playoff team. And I think they should be going out there and adding because I think they're a playoff team. But I get his perspective. They are barely in right now. Yeah. He's got a legitimate argument.
And a loss today makes that again an even more intriguing conversation because they're that much closer. I said a couple of weeks ago, and it's why I kind of agree with Jim Bowden, even though I lean towards they probably are a playoff team. I think one of them or Milwaukee is the one that falls out because I still don't believe in Milwaukee. Cardinals can catch Milwaukee. I believe the Brewers could go through another free fall again in the second half.
All right, last thing here. Guys, how cool was it to see Lance Lynn get to 2,000 strikeouts for his career? I feel like it's being slept on as a pretty amazing accomplishment for him. The only guys currently active that have more strikeouts in their career than Lance Lynn, there's only 5 of them. It's Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, Chris Sale, and Garrett Cole. For Lance Lynn to be a basically exclusively fastball thrower and to get to 2,000 strikeouts for his career by doing that, when the Cardinals essentially told him, yeah, we don't want you here any longer, when he was up for a contract, and then he just went on and continued doing what he did the entire time that he was here in St. Louis. Lance Lynn has had one hell of a baseball career, man.
Anytime you have longevity with a career, I think it's impressive. And then when you put that type of accolade on it, I mean, he went through 5 different Major League Baseball teams after the Cardinals basically told him, we don't think you're a good enough starting pitcher anymore, and just kept adding on to that. So much so to put the Cardinals in a position that say, we need you to come back to get to 2,000. So
and the only team he wasn't good for was the Minnesota Twins. Yeah. Basically every other team that he played for in that time since 2017, he was really good for him.
And he still had incredible strikeout numbers with Minnesota, too.
Yeah, and the reason I think he struggled in that one is kind of like what you've seen with Montgomery and Snell. I think that year he signed late in spring training, and it threw everything off.
That, yep.
And then he got traded. I don't remember where he got traded. I think he got traded.
New York.
That's right. He got traded.
And he had 10 strikeouts per 9 innings with New York.
I think the part that's impressed about it is the longevity, especially because I think he's doing like the second most, what would be the right word for this? The second most injury-prone position in any sport, not named football because those guys are hitting each other. He's throwing, and we see pitchers' arm and how fragile those are. He's been able to get 2,000 strikeouts, and to BK's point, with nothing but a fastball, which is fascinating.
And here's the other thing, too. He got Cy Young votes. He was in the top 3 once for the Cy Young, and he got 3 Cy Young votes, and all of those are on the back end of his career, if you're going to say it that way.
I know it becomes like a joke and a punchline, but to do it at his size is pretty amazing. Like Lance Lynn is one of the most durable pitchers in the sport. That's amazing. So yeah, kudos to Lance Lynn, what he did yesterday, the accomplishment. That should absolutely be celebrated. All right, he's Alex's T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, another person. That was amazing. Kyle Gibson was on with the morning show earlier today. He was like,
he didn't know.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? Lance Lynn, after the game, was asked about it. He was like, somebody asked him, did Wilson Contreras know about your milestone? He's like, yeah, he knew about it. He's in the moment. All right. Coming up next, Alec Burleson, another guy that should be celebrated for what he's done so far this year, putting up one of the best seasons by a left-handed hitter for the Cardinals in the last 60 years. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
ground ball. That'll get the job done. Way to go, Mason. Line to the right field. Burleson with a 2-strike bullet, and the Cardinals take the lead. He is something else.
That's what it sounded like last night on Bally Sports Midwest. Alec Burleson putting together one hell of a season, Alex. When you go over to ESPN, they've got something on their stats site that says projected numbers for the season. In other words, what are they on pace for? And right now, Alec Burleson is on pace for 29 home runs and 96 RBIs. 96 RBIs for Alec Burleson. And he got off to like an okay start to the season. His first month of the year, he was batting like 250 with the OPS right around 750. He was pretty good. And then he became just an otherworldly hitter starting in early June. OPSs over the last couple of months, 825, 985. And over the last 30 days, he's got an OPS nearing 900. If you look at those on-pace numbers, 29 homers, 96 ribbies. Pretty damn close to 30 home run, 100 RBI season, right? And those are just like milestone types of achievements. That's what we always talk about with Nolan Arenado. Back of the baseball card, 30 and 100 every year. When you look at the left-handed bats that have done that for the Cardinals since 1955, so almost the last 70 years, lefty bats, there have only been 2 of them. 30 homers, 100 RBIs, doing it from the left side. It's Jim Edmonds. He did it 3 times, 2000, 2001, 2004. And Ray Langford, who did it in 1998, and what will go down as one of the most forgotten great seasons by a Cardinal in recent memory because, you know, the other guy did something pretty important in 1998. That's it since the 1956 season. Stan Musial did it like 100 times, but that's the other guy that's done it since 1940. Alex, what are we witnessing right now with Alec Burleson? Put this in context.
With what you just said, you're witnessing the emergence of a star for the Cardinals. And once again, we've had this conversation about Mason Wynn earlier in the season, and it's another guy that I did not expect, let me correct myself, that the Cardinals did not expect to emerge as a star because this dude wasn't even going to make the opening day roster if not for Jordan Walker and Tommy Edman. Like that's where this team is at right now. And you're witnessing, you just comped it to Jim Edmonds and Ray Langford. I understand it's one season and there still can be some growing pains of Alec Burleson when the league adjusts to him. But you're witnessing an impact middle of the order bat right now with Burleson's emergence. And frankly, for the Cardinals, I mean, we've said this a lot. They just can't develop stars for some reason. Since Pujols and Molina, it's been, when's the next star coming? When's the next star coming? And it's just been failure after failure. And I know Tavares passed away, but it's just been, well, he's not that guy. Burleson might be that dude. And especially watching him this season, like yesterday against Paul Skeens. I get he was 104 pitches in. But against Paul Skeens, Burleson comes away with the big hit. He's done that multiple times this season against some of the best pitchers in the game. So to me, you're witnessing, hopefully, the emergence of one of these stars. And the best part about it is nobody thought that he was going to be that star.
Yeah, I think the part, and you mentioned, like, be that guy. The part that makes it feel different is he is such a good contact hitter. You know, he can hit for power while also making contact, and there's not a hole in his swing. And when you think of a lot of the stars across baseball, you think of like he's not this guy, but you think like a Bryce Harper. There's not a hole in Bryce Harper's swing. Sure, there's a little swing and miss in this game, but there's not a hole that you can expose. Yep. I think that's what makes it feel different compared to a lot of the guys we've seen in the past where you're like, okay, can he be that guy? Could Nolan Gorman be the guy that we're talking about that becomes that star left-handed bat? There's too much swing and miss in his game. He's got great power, too much swing and miss. He's not going to ever be a consistent player. When you have such great bat-to-ball skills that Alec Burleson has, it makes me think it feels sustainable for the St. Louis Cardinals and that they found themselves a gem by accident. They tried to block him in the offseason, but they found a gem by accident, and it's what they need. It's what you need. You need to be able to develop somebody internally to be a star on offense, and they've done that, it looks like.
I suck at comps, so tell me I'm crazy on this one.
Let's come up with one.
Okay.
I'm curious who you got.
Is he a lefty, Kyle Tucker?
I mean, Kyle Tucker is a lefty.
I did not know that. I thought Kyle Tucker was a righty.
I
was looking at throws right, not bats right.
If that's what he becomes, you've done pretty well.
I mean, but doesn't strike out a whole lot. He's 30 home run guy, 100 RBIs.
He's got some of that in him.
Now his defense, obviously, not in the outfield. He'll be a first baseman.
He's not as athletic as Kyle Tucker is, but and that's a big part of his game. Like you look at the stolen base numbers, Kyle Tucker is like a 25 plus stolen base guy at this point. So they're a little different. I was going to come up with a different guy. What about Anthony Rizzo? Both lefty bats.
He's a righty.
Don't strike out a whole lot. Rizzo walked more than what we're seeing from Alec Burleson. That's a clear difference between the two. But I think Burleson's probably going to eventually be a left-handed first baseman. I think that's probably where he fits long term. 25 to 30 home run type of power. I could see some of that, like a really good doubles hitter as well. That's probably the closest comparison that I can come up with, is kind of similar to Rizzo, a little higher maybe on the average, a little lower on the walk rate, and they just come to the similar in terms of on-base percentage in different ways. That's probably the closest thing that you got. But I mentioned 30 and 100. Those are kind of the benchmark milestone types of numbers, right? From the left side, here are the players that have done that, Alex, since 2011. 30 homers, 100 RBIs, and doing it at this age, 25 or younger. Juan Soto, he did it a couple of times. This guy's really good. Kyle Tucker. Rafael Devers did it a couple times.
And isn't he a switch hitter?
I think Rafael Devers is a lefty,
I think he's
if I'm not
lefty.
mistaken. Jordan Alvarez.
I thought Kyle Tucker was a righty.
Cody Bellinger.
He's a lefty.
Bryce Harper.
Oh, my gosh.
That's the
Okay.
end of the list. All of those guys have one thing in common. There was nothing fluky about it.
Yeah.
They were that guy early on in their careers, and then they never looked back. And I think that's something that we've kind of been wondering in the back of our minds, because we've seen these shooting stars go across the sky here in St. Louis a couple of different times.
Like who?
I remember you, Aledmus Diaz.
Oh, yeah.
I remember you, Steven Piscotty.
Man, what a year Aledmus Diaz was.
I remember you, Tyler O'Neill.
I remember you, Randall Grichuk.
I remember you, Dylan Carlson. I remember you, 2023 version, second half of the year, Jordan Walker. Like, I remember these guys. And it was really fun to watch at the time. And then it did not look the same in the second year. Does this feel different to you guys? Or does this feel like you've got that guard out because you're worried that he might be one of those players once again?
The guard is always going to be out with the Cardinals. Like, the guard will always be out. What feels different is what T-Bone said. Like, it doesn't feel like there's a hole of Alec Burleson. All those guys that you mentioned, you saw the holes. Like, Tyler O'Neill he couldn't stay healthy. Aledmus Diaz was like, I don't know how you're running into all of this power, but you continue to find ways to do it. Jordan Walker, you saw the hole. It was the first half of the season. I haven't seen a hole with Alec Burleson.
That's a good point.
But until next season, as of right now, the guard is going to be up no matter what, because I just don't trust the Cardinals in terms of developing. But if he finishes the way that he has gone about it this whole season and has some postseason success if they get there, I'll be a lot more willing to open my heart to Alec Burleson being a star than what I was prior to this season.
Yeah, I've got the guardrails up a little bit. Like, I wouldn't do a contract extension. BK, stay calm over there.
No, I'm with you.
You like the O'Neill.
I talk about it.
10 by 100, 10 by 100, I think, is a great idea.
Like, it's not even a conversation for me.
I would do 10 by 100 right now. I'll pay him $10 million for 10 years.
He's 25 years old. You're telling me I get the entirety of his prime for $10 million a year? Let's do it.
Yes.
Where do I sign
for
up?
10 mil?
It's not even a phone
he's
call
Kyle
I'm
Tucker,
making
10
this
mil is
offseason.
great.
It's not a phone call I'm making this
I'm
offseason.
doing it.
But I do think it is sustainable. I do think, maybe not the 30 and 100, but I do think what you're seeing from him, I think he is going to be a sustainable player. I don't think this is a blip on the radar because of what I mentioned. I think his bat-to-ball skills are too good. And I think now he's learned to have a better pitch selection and crush those ones when he gets the chance. And then when he doesn't see it, he'll just put the bat on it and take his single when he needs to. I think it is sustainable. Like the other guys that you mentioned, like O'Neill had way too much swing and miss in his game. Piscotty and Diaz, it was a different era, and I think that's what makes this impressive. The bat-to-ball skill he has in the swing and miss era, I think it's sustainable. I think it really is.
Somebody on the text line brought up a player that I mentioned earlier today just because I remember him for his clutchness. That's not a word, but Alan Craig. Now, he's a right-handed hitter, and Alec Burleson goes about it from the left side of things. But if you told me, hey, he's going to be for the next 3 years what Alan Craig was in his first 3 years of his career, I would sign up for that so quickly, dude. Alan Craig was such a good hitter. And then the injuries popped up, and he was never the same guy again. And, it sucks that was the case because I think Alan Craig was on pace to have a really good major league career as a hitter. The injuries caught up with him. If you told me that Alec Burleson could have that minus the injuries, yeah, that sounds about right to me. A lot of contact. Alan Craig, in 2012, Alan Craig hit 305 in 120 games, and he struck out 89 times. That's a throwback player, and that's exactly who Alec Burleson is. So that feels right. That feels kind of similar to the type of player that we're talking about here. He also didn't walk a ton, so that's actually probably a more apt comparison, and just from a hitter profile than what I mentioned with Anthony Rizzo, because Rizzo just takes so many walks that it kind of changes the way that you're looking at
I love the Alan Craig. I mean, positionally, it shows you exactly the same player, too. The outfielder that was lined up to be the next first baseman when Pujols left.
Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. Matthew Liberatore,
he's walking the world.
How's it going?
Not going super well.
Hey, maybe if you just kept him as a high leverage arm, he wouldn't have this problem.
I do find it interesting. Matthew Liberatore, if I go back to his appearances real quick. Last time he appeared in a game was 10 days ago. Last time he went more than an inning was 2 weeks ago against the Royals. He went 1 2/3. Last time he went at least, he appeared in 3 innings was July 6th against the Washington Nationals. And in that game, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, struck out 2 and walked 1. He hasn't thrown more than 50 pitches, which is what he's approaching right now, since June 26th. The role that they're asking Matthew Liberatore to succeed in is just so unfair to him, man. And I get it. Like, somebody's got to be in this role. I hate the way that they managed this game. Did we end up talking about this on air? Or did we just do this off air? I can't remember. Everything just kind of goes together. We talk so much about this team.
We talked about how would they get through this game today.
The last couple of days, I can't remember if we brought this to the air. I so badly wish they just would have called somebody up for this start. It would have changed everything about the way that they managed the last couple of days. The last couple of days, there's been some weird stuff, but whatever. I don't think Liberatore should be starting this game. I think this should be a Graceffo or a Kloffenstein. I would have to check specifically as to who was on turn. I think, did Graceffo start last night?
He started last night. He got rocked, so.
It's fair, but like, who knows what the circumstances would have been had he known, extra day of rest, whatever. They should have gone with one of those 2 guys today. And this is not second guessing. We had mentioned this in the office many times prior to today. I just don't like the way they've been handling Matthew Liberatore. I think it's unfair to him. I think it's unfair to the team, and I don't think they put themselves in the best position to succeed today.
If you're going to put a whipping boy in this position that just gets lit up every 5th time that you have to go to a bullpen game, you should be doing it with somebody who you don't believe has a future with the team. Not a dude who has shown you the ability to pitch well as a bullpen arm and in 7th or 8th inning situations, and for a need when one of your pitchers isn't available to you or has his stuff right now in JoJo Romero, like Zach Thompson or Graceffo. One of these guys should be in this position right now because that's the bullpen type of game. It's a guy that's probably going to get lit up, but you know what? He's going to help us survive this game and not overuse certain guys. And now you're going into this with Matthew Liberatore, who should be used in a different role.
I understood early on in the year why you felt like you needed a swingman or we have to start Liberatore because we just don't. They didn't have anything that could start in the minors early on. The 3 times we've seen Graceffo, and the time we saw Kloffenstein, they look good. Like, they look like they could at least give you serviceable time here at the big leagues.
I'm sorry, Tebow, not to interrupt, but if you've ever wanted a reason why Michael Ciani is your everyday center fielder, it just took place. Dylan Carlson tried to make a diving catch, and the ball fell out of his glove, and now 2 runs have scored.
I didn't see the play, so I can't speak to it, but I'm not surprised.
This is why Michael Ciani is your everyday starting center fielder.
Again, I'm just going to say I'm not surprised, and I'm going to say that spot on the roster would Ciani makes that catch.
Well, you don't believe me?
Ciani makes that catch.
How long have we worked together, and you don't believe me?
Newbar makes that catch.
I know it was.
It's in his glove.
He tried to, get it over to his hand and throw the guy out in a diving play. This is why.
Hey, you know what would be really nice today? A right-handed bat that could help you.
Like who?
Can he play center?
No, he's a catcher.
You want Mark Cannon out there? This is why Michael Ciani's
their
there.
roster management has been weird. And
Herrera could start behind the plate today. He could have. He could have been your catcher.
He's not good defensively.
I understand. I don't care. His bat is too valuable. You stink against left-hand. Sorry. The Cardinals, I believe, have really mismanaged this game. I'm not saying that about Ollie. I'm saying the roster did not put them in position to be able to have success in this game.
Well, to make you feel better, Ollie helped make the decision for this start today,
so
you can put him in this conversation.
Yeah, maybe he's a part of the conversation. I know you want to defend him, man, but it's part of the conversation. Just because you guys are boys and you have your in the clubhouse meetings.
He gets a C for the way he's managed this series. I've
what
not
are you
been
doing
impressed
with the Carlson experiment, dude? What more is there to see, man? It's not
sending
working.
Him down right now. We're on the phone.
It is not
right now.
working. He's been bad at the plate. He's absolutely not a center fielder. If you want to bring somebody up and put him into that position, cool. Do something else. Like, I would just rather see Lars Nootbaar get these opportunities in center. Because Dylan Carlson can't do it, man. And his bat does not make up for the lack of defensive value that he has in center field. Just start Michael Ciani in this game.
I'm gonna make a bold prediction right here. I think that play just got Dylan Carlson traded away from St. Louis at the deadline.
That play should get him optioned and then traded.
Whoa.
You need that roster spot, man. You do. You need somebody. Like, put Luken Baker on the roster. Put
in
somebody.
center field?
No, obviously you're not going to do that.
I'd like to see it, though, man.
Can we? And I'm no Luken Baker, like, Stan. That is not my guy. But what Thomas Ajacey, he's been heating up lately. Cesar Prieto is hitting like 700 down in the minor leagues right now. Somebody has got to be better for that role of a left or right-handed bat that can help you against left-handed pitching. They clearly don't see the value in having Ivan Herrera, who has no position. Whatever, fine, I'll concede the argument there. You got other guys. You got other options that are down in AAA right now that can do better. I promise you. I can't promise you. I don't know.
Luken Baker,
that at least deserve an opportunity more than what we've seen from Dylan Carlson.
Luken Baker is almost the same size as Aaron Judge, and Aaron Judge can play center field, so I'm in.
Luken Baker has 26 home runs this year in 85 games. It's absurd.
Does he
I don't trust
lefties?
it. I absolutely would not bring him up. I would go Prieto. That would be my guy, personally. But, you know, they don't ask me. Coming up next, NFL Quick Hitters here on 101 ESPN. All right, it's time for some NFL quick hitters with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, let's start with the news today in the NFL. Feels like every day there's a new story about one of the wide receivers that's unhappy with his current contract situation. The latest is CeeDee Lamb, who's not expected to report to training camp until he gets a new contract. He currently is entering the last year of his deal. It's scheduled to pay him roughly $18 million this season. The Cowboys have been bracing for this. They knew there was a chance that he wasn't going to report to camp. They've got contract situations with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb to hash out. They also have a pending contract situation starting next year with all-world's everything defensive end Micah Parsons that they've got to figure out. They've already paid their corner. They got a lot of stuff going on right now in Dallas. Alex, do you think this is going to end up being similar to the Cowboys, to what the Chiefs had to deal with last year with Chris Jones? Is this going to potentially go all the way into the season?
I think so. I mean, CeeDee Lamb isn't bluffing with this one, and I personally don't think it should have even gotten to this point. Like, if there's three guys that I'm going to negotiate with and get the deal done, CeeDee Lamb is at the top of that list over Dak, and I could argue with Micah Parsons, but, like, I heard Golick and Golick Jr. talking about it this morning. Like, I think he, like, tripled in terms of the amount of passes thrown to him of the second best receiver on the Cowboys last year, CeeDee Lamb did. He basically carried that team on his shoulders last season. They had no running game, and beyond CeeDee Lamb, you were talking about non-existent. So if there's one guy that needs to get signed, it would be CeeDee Lamb. And I understand you have to pay or you don't want to pay all of these wide receivers, and the quarterback's important, and Micah Parsons is a difference maker. But CeeDee Lamb is the reason the Cowboys were so good last year, and not paying him, I think you're going to suffer from that.
I don't think it's going to go all the way to the regular season, though. I think you're going to see him hold out a training camp, and this probably gets into the preseason games. I think he reports by the time you get to the regular season. I think the Jones one was such an oddity where he missed the first week of the season and finally signed his deal. I don't think you're going to see that happen again. I don't know if he signs just a one-year deal or they get a contract extension done, but I would be shocked if he ends up missing playing time on the field.
I don't know, man. I think he gets back to camp before the start of the year. But, like, if you're willing to miss right now, why would you report? That's my question. There's no real leverage for the player here until you miss games. That's where the leverage actually exists, is if you're costing your team, and they have nothing beyond him. Like, their receiver core is a real nightmare beyond CeeDee Lamb. They got, like, Brandon Cooks, and that's kind of it. So if you're him, that would potentially hinder their ability to win early on in the season against Cleveland, New Orleans, and Baltimore. That's your first 3 games of the season. And Dallas is trying to go into like a Super Bowl or bust type of a season, even if none of us believe they can actually win the Super Bowl this year. If you're going to miss the first day of camp and you're going to miss $50,000 per day that you miss in camp, you should probably be willing to miss games. And I don't think Dallas is paying him. I don't think Dallas is planning to give him a new contract extension. I don't think they're planning to give Dak a new contract extension. It's something worth keeping an eye on, man. I would say as of today, my bet would be on him missing at least a game, similar to what Chris Jones did last year.
That team is going to be in shambles after this season.
And the only thing Jones got right was a one-year deal, but it guaranteed he couldn't get franchise tagged again.
Yeah,
is that right?
I think that's basically what it did. So it allowed him to get to the market the following season, which is a meaningful thing. Like, if you're in CeeDee Lamb's shoes and that's what you end up getting out of this, that's a big deal. Because now you can negotiate with the entire league instead of only being able to negotiate with your team. Next thing up as we go through some NFL quick hitters. Guys, which NFL coach, in your opinion, is facing the most pressure heading into this season? I just realized we did that yesterday. However, there is an 18-game schedule that might be coming to the league. I just copied and pasted and realized as I was Burgundying that I messed up.
Boy,
It's been better. My answer's still the same.
Yeah, I was going to say, mine hasn't changed. It's still Mike McCarthy.
If you want to go through it, we could go through it again. The NFL and NFLPA, according to the Washington Post, have begun discussions about a potential 18-game season. The executive director confirmed that to the Post. Alex, what are some of the potential drawbacks to this? Because I think for us on the outside looking at it, right, more football is good. Mm-hmm. We're going to all watch it. It's going to be fun. It'll be entertaining. 18 games, though, just like 17 games, could potentially come with some unintended consequences. What do you think that could be? What are some of the things that you'd be worried about?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is injuries. I mean, you're adding one more to it, and I know the season is essentially going to be the same because you're cutting out some of these preseason games, but preseason versus regular season, you're talking about more games for these guys to be playing, which, to me, creates the potential consequence of late season injuries, which impacts the playoffs, which takes away a lot of the excitement if you're getting those injuries.
That's probably the number one thing for me, because the more games there are, the more risk you are losing the most valuable thing in the NFL, which is the starting quarterback. And if those guys get hurt, then the regular season means nothing for those teams that have that, and that's a major issue. It's why they've protected the quarterback so much. I think the other one, too, is, and it ties into the injuries, is my assumption is when they do an 18-game schedule, everybody's going to be playing an international game, which just adds unbelievable amount of travel to those guys' body, which leads to more injuries. That would be the one thing that I worry about, which also then when those guys aren't healthy and they're playing, it also takes down the ability that you see on the field. You know, week 1's the best football you're going to see. Week 17, those guys are just fighting through injuries, and they're still playing at a high level, but it's not at the best when they're at 100%. I wonder if
that makes 2 games towards the end of the season also where you see a lot of guys sat to make sure they're ready for the playoffs. And now you're taking, rather than 1 game that's so bad because everybody's out of it, 2 games that are going to be bad.
That would be one of my concerns as well. And then what does that do for your playoff rust versus rest arguments? I worry that we're getting to the breaking point of how many games can a player's body handle over the course of one season. Because if you go 18 games, let's say you play in the wild card round, right? So you have the wild card round, the divisional round, the conference championship, and the Super Bowl. You're going to play 22 football games, not including the preseason. So 25 football games in 1 calendar year. Dude, there's only 52 weeks in a year. You're basically playing football, like meaningful football games, for half of a calendar year. With how big, strong, and fast these players are today, man, there's only so many hits that a body has in it. And I do fear that we're getting close to that breaking point. You'll have basically upgraded the season like 20% compared to what it was as recently as 5 years ago if you go to 18 games. That is a big, big, big deal. So it's a real concern. I do think that the injury conversations are something the PA should not be taking lightly, so they got to get a lot out of this. If you're going to go to an 18-game schedule, you better be getting a huge concession from the league, and that means like a bigger portion of the pie. Like if the revenue stream right now, I think it's pretty close to 50-50 if I'm not mistaken. It's like 52% on your side of things.
And there's where negotiations break off because owners aren't giving away more money.
But dude, the owners can get so much money from that extra week of revenue from television rights.
Yeah.
Extra week of revenue from TV rights, potentially an extra package with like, hey, Amazon, we've got this international package that we're now going to be selling. It's no longer going to be on NFL Network on Sunday mornings. Amazon Prime. Every Sunday morning, 9 o'clock Central Time, you'll be the one that we're going to for that. How much are you willing to pay? Oh, $1 billion a year? Cool. And now if you're the league, you're like, sweet, we just added $500 million a year for our league on the owner side of things. The players get another $500 million, which is split up between the 32 teams. So you get an extra $15 million a year in cap space. That's going straight to the players. So that's the kind of thing that you've got to be able to get if you're going to go to this 18-game schedule. All right, for Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, The Athletic has continued their rankings of the best teams set up for their future outlook at goalie. Where do the Blues rank? I don't think Alex is going to be happy about this. He'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tara Hendricks near the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Pirates yesterday 2-1, and they are currently in action in Game 3 of their three-game set with Pittsburgh. They trail 4-0 in the top of the fourth. Martin Perez is getting the start for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Cardinals have a bullpen game today as Matthew Liberatore got the start for them. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. All right, so The Athletic is putting together a ranking of each NHL team's current outlook, their current and future goaltending outlook. Alex, the first article they released was the 10 worst teams when it comes to their future outlook at the position. The Blues, thank God, were not included in that because Dom was not prominently involved in this article. Otherwise, they would have.
They would have been 32 if Dom was involved.
Today, they put out what they consider to be the, quote, mushy middle, end quote, among teams and their goaltending outlook. The Blues are included on this list. And according to them, they come out at number 19, essentially right smack dab in the middle of the league. They said their current outlook, 14th. Future outlook, 22nd, And based upon what they've got cap-wise with Jordan Binnington and Hofer, it's 17th in the league. Alex, they essentially say you're a middle-of-the-pack goaltending situation for the here and now and for the future. I'm going to go and ask the question, even though I already know the answer. Do you agree with that assessment?
I don't, which I know. Surprise, surprise. I'm not as angry about this one, though, because, I don't know who's going to be in the top 10. I can go kind of process of elimination here. And a lot of those teams, I can understand why they're in the top 10. Cap situations and future-wise, some of those teams make a lot of sense. But looking at this, I think you're right. I think you are right in the middle because, of course, Binnington's making $6 million. And I think to a lot of people, that's too much money. We in St. Louis think it's more, better than what most places are playing goaltenders. And then with Joel Hofer, the future, I would say their future is actually a little bit better because you got a dude who's on an entry level who by the time Binnington's gone is going to be in his prime and Joel Hofer. So you don't really worry about your minors. But there were a couple of teams that I was looking at this mushy middle, and I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that one. And the main one was the Edmonton Oilers. I think the perks of the Edmonton Oilers is that the cap, you're not committed to these guys beyond 2 years. But I don't know if that's a positive. For the Blues, the reason I would say that their cap is a lot more positive is because you've got a guy who is a number one, who's locked up at $6 million, and compared to what most number ones make, he's $2 or $3 million cheaper. I mean, look at what Bobrovsky's making or Andrei Vasilevsky's making. And then on top of it, you got a dude who's in an entry-level contract. You're paying $6 million, $7 million for two guys that are one of the best tandems in the NHL. Edmonton, although they did have Stuart Skinner, who was good for them last year, Stuart Skinner's a free agent in 2 years and he's going to be 27 years old. You don't have a backup goaltender. You're still paying Jack Campbell $2 million of dead cap to not be a good goaltender, and you got nothing in your minor league. So I would have given him a slight tick up, but it makes sense that they're in this spot because nobody likes Jordan Binnington.
Did you see who was at 18?
Yes.
The Detroit Red Wings.
Oh, yeah.
My boy Husso.
They're there. No, Husso's not even projected to be their backup QB this year.
It's funny because they're the opposite of the Blues. The Blues, everything about their outlook is hey, the current and the future, middle of the pack.
The current sucks. The future's the best part.
They say the Red Wings have the worst outlook in the NHL for this year.
Yeah.
And the best outlook for the future.
Let me read this one to you,
literally
T-Bone.
number one.
One question for them will be whether the team wants to recommit to Ville Husso, who's been just okay
on a $4.75 million AAV contract.
It's a team
that
around
expires
him,
next year.
Well, and that's why I'm surprised that Edmonton was higher because, Edmonton doesn't have a future. I don't agree that they're 21 in their future. I think they're, bad. And that's why I do think the Blues are a little shortchanged. And it's just because their future is much better than what they originally said at 22 because
I feel like I view these things differently than whatever this article did, whatever these people did that...
Whoa, these people?
I know, that did the article. Scott Wheeler, Jesse Granger, Sean McIndoe.
Jesse also hates Jordan Binnington because he's a goalie.
However, whatever their analysis was for this, my view would be this. Do I think your goalie can win you a cup? Full stop. Like, do I view the number one goalie on your roster as somebody that can win a cup for you? My answer on the Blues is a resounding yes. My answer on a lot of teams is a no.
Well, you think Detroit's goalies can win them a cup, Tebow?
Not currently. And to be fair, like they also clearly don't because they viewed him 32nd heading into this upcoming season.
Oh, God.
But like for some of the teams that are in front of the Blues, I don't know how you can honestly say yes. So that's
like Colorado. Colorado being higher up on the Blues to me is just trash. And the reason is, their contracts, they're out of those in a couple of years. I don't view that as a good thing.
How about Anaheim, who's at 11th on this list?
Oh, yeah, that's terrible.
John Gibson, a good goalie, like objectively a good goalie, and has been good for the vast majority of his career, and he's in a crap situation right now. That team's terrible. But like, if you told me, hey, you get to choose, do you want Jordan Binnington or John Gibson for the next 3 years? I'm taking Binnington. Personally.
See, that's why, like, the ranking that they have of cap and how they're, like, saying, well, this is beneficial because you can get out of this contract, to me, that's a negative because now you're going to the market to overpay for a goaltender if you don't have a minor league system, which Colorado,
it's like a quarterback. Do I have a guy or not?
Exactly. And that's why I would give the Blues a slight edge because you already got a guy who's a backup to your number one. And even Scott Wheeler had said that this kid in the minors for the Blues has number one potential. So I don't get how they would be that low. I thought they would be like 11 or 12. I don't agree with 19, but I think a lot of that is just like you mentioned. They look at it and they say, how fast can we get out of the contract that we're under right now? And what's our minor league system look like?
All right. Can we take a hard right turn into the Cardinals game again?
We come back?
No,
actually, they went further down.
Commercial breaks. They're probably changing
Matthew
pitchers.
Liberatore gave up a 700-foot home run to Rowdy Tellez.
Yeah.
A lefty?
Pittsburgh's getting rowdy right now.
Nice.
I was a little off. It was 450.
A little off.
It was a absolute rocket.
Wow.
He did not record an out in the fourth inning, and now Chris Roycroft is coming in to pitch to Michael Taylor.
So you got 3 innings. Good job,
You're
man.
down 5-0. You have one hit so far off of Martin Perez. I don't even really want to analyze what's going on with Matthew Liberatore today because we talked about that earlier. Like it was a tough situation for him from the moment that they announced that he was going to be starting this game last night. Like the way that they approached it all week, it was just weird, and I didn't like it. I disagreed with it, but whatever. Let's set that aside. This lineup is going up today against Martin Perez, who this season has a 5.6 ERA. A 5.6 ERA, guys. He's been bad. He's been a below league average pitcher so far on the year. Opposing hitters this year against Martin Perez have an OPS of 895. They're batting .320 against him. The Cardinals, how many hits do you guys think they have today? One.
You said that already, man. One. I knew that guess.
One hit against him. Like, that's what's unacceptable. If there are two things that we've learned from this series, and it's been the case for a really long time, but because we're close to the deadline and you're learning more about your team and you're going up against a potential playoff threat, et cetera, like I think you really start to assess your team around this time of the year, prior to the deadline a week away. We've learned they need options in the 6th and the 7th inning, bullpen-wise. I think you need 2 arms if you can get them. Maybe Riley O'Brien becomes one of those guys if you really trust his rehab stint, and like he's got a long runway, but maybe you couldn't convince yourself of that. I can't. Maybe they can.
I hope they don't.
They will.
Even if he is, though, you need another. The other thing is, once again, this team is so bad against left-handed pitching. It's so bad against them, man. 29th in Major League Baseball in terms of production against lefties. And today, you do not have Nolan Gorman in the lineup. It's probably the right decision to not have him in the lineup against a lefty. Guys, the more I've been thinking about this, and I go back to that trade that we proposed in our own fantasy land yesterday, and it won't happen, but just to talk about it for a second. Brent Rooker, right-handed bat, 29 years old, couple of years of control remaining, 1 year less than what you have with Nolan Gorman, for Nolan Gorman and Gordon Graceffo. Something with that kind of a framework. And why would the A's do that? Well, because they get younger, higher upside, left-handed bat, defensive value. You could probably trade Nolan Gorman in a year or two if you really wanted to, if you're the A's, and he is able to gain the value that you think he ultimately will. Maybe he can be a 40 home run hitter for them there, right? And you're selling high on Rooker, who you don't know what the future is going to be. This guy was placed on waivers 2 years ago. Like, this might be his peak value.
And he's
for you.
old.
Yeah, 29 years old right now. Like, you probably want to cash out right now if you're the A's. This is the time to do it. So that's why the A's would do it. Why do the Cardinals do it? Well, because you desperately need right-handed production. And Rooker is one of the best right-handed hitters in all of baseball this year. You might be buying fool's gold. It might be a scenario where you're buying at the exact peak of a player's value, and it just gets worse from here. You don't know how he's going to react when he gets into a pressurized situation. He's been in Oakland. That's where the success is happening for him right now. But, man, as I watch this team day to day, I can see how if you're in Mo's shoes, you look at a deal like that kind of thing, and say, whew, maybe that's exactly what we need to do. Maybe that's the exact kind of shakeup we need for this order. Because as I look at like the lineup today, Wynn, Burleson, Contreras, Rooker, it's got a different feel to it than what they actually ended up putting out there today against a left-handed pitcher.
You got to trade an odd man out. And unfortunately for Nolan Gorman, the other lefties are finding ways to make an impact on the team when they're going through a rut. We talked about how it just doesn't feel like Burleson has holes. Lars Nootbaar, despite the injuries he's gone through, still finding ways to make impact. And then Brendan Donovan, you're talking about super utility guy. Unfortunately for Nolan Gorman, it is literally boom or bust with him. You're either hitting home runs or you aren't doing anything to contribute to wins. And right now, you need something. You need something that you can look at and rely on hope, because the Goldschmidt-Arenado train, that's gone off the trails. It's not getting back on. And now you're relying on 4 guys to carry you. And unfortunately for this team, 2 of those 4 aren't any good against lefties.
Yeah. And I think when you look at it, and look, Burley's the guy that I'm fascinated to know what they do with, because if they're going to go out and just get not even a controllable bat like Rooker, if they want a Canna, Burley's the guy they're going to platoon, because Burley's one of their worst hitters against lefties. And that's where it's going to get interesting to see this happen. But I think you're right. I think it needs to be probably a shakeup like this, because you can still make it work. Against lefties, he's in your lineup, like you said. When you put Rooker in the 4 spot, it now looks like a legitimate 1 through 4, unlike today where, sure, Goldie's got the name recognition, Arenado got the name recognition. They're not hitting left-handed pitching this year. And when you go up against a right-handed pitcher, you also still have the spots where Donovan can play second. You've got Burley in a corner, Nootbaar in a corner, and you've got Ciani in center. It just seems to be like a perfect fit. I just don't know if they're going to be willing to give up the value that Nolan Gorman
dude,
holds.
it's hard. It's really hard to Rooker makes me so nervous. You're buying a guy that everything about this feels fake to me, and yet he hits the crap out of the base. None of his production. Last year, the stuff that you saw from Cody Bellinger, that was fake. Everybody saw, and clearly based on his market and free agency, everybody could see this is going to come back down to earth. He's not going to hit for this kind of power if this is the batted ball profile moving forward. It's the opposite with Rooker. Rooker's batted ball profile is really good, but he strikes out basically at the same rate as Nolan Gorman. It's from the right side, which is always just a little bit more fragile because there's fewer left-handed bats or left-handed pitchers to be able to crush for him. And he's 29 years old. He's doing it for a team that doesn't matter. The games don't matter. The situations don't matter. Just swing for the fences, big boy. That's your job every single game. So all of that makes me really, really nervous. And yet, given where the Cardinals are at and given what he could be, which you can dream on for him, there's a lot of reasons to talk yourself into it. A lot of them. The lack of a position is a tough part. If he played right field, if he was Mark Canna in terms of positional value, where it's just capably you can play in right field or left field or wherever, I think that really changes things. But I don't know that you can even throw him out there in the outfield. He's pretty bad defensively.
I think what you do in that situation is you make a bold decision, and Goldschmidt becomes your DH, and you use him at first. Or you use
Never played first.
No, but I guess you're putting him in the outfield
DH.
then. Yeah.
He's got to be a DH for you.
I think what it would be is the Cardinals finally admit that there is value in a guy that can just provide offense in DH, because they haven't done it except for Pujols in 22. But ever since then, they've said we don't value guys that are positionless. Look at why Ivan Herrera is not with the club right now today.
And yet, Matt Carpenter's here. Coming up next, the Juncture here on 101
And
ESPN.
Crawford. Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Classic Air Care. It was a hot one yesterday, and of course, it's going to continue to keep getting hot outside. But the best part about it is I use Classic Air Care, so I'm never concerned about my air conditioning unit. And look, I've had 27-year-old units, 28-year-old units, and luckily Classic Air Care has found ways to keep those things going for me, being a part of that maintenance program. But what I love about them is I was in the market for a new HVAC system because mine finally went kaput. I had them come out there. They were out there that Monday morning. It went out on a Saturday to check it, tell me that basically, yep, this thing's not coming back to life, so we have to go into the whole market of an HVAC system, which is a little scary, but they made it so easy. They walked you through the whole process. They explained what you need, what you don't need. They have financing options available for you. I love the fact that you have knowledgeable technicians that are out there that can explain it all, really dumb it down for me, knowing what we're getting in this new HVAC system. So give Classic Air Care a call today. If yours is in good condition, then just get on the maintenance program so they can keep it in great condition. Check them out online, classicaircare.com. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. That's Classic Air Care.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, let's dive into the junk drawer. Alex, I've got a question for you. I've got a pet problem at home.
A pet problem?
Pet. Yep, my dog.
Oh, okay. What happened?
She is, she's like 8.5 years old. She's getting up there in age at this point. She's a rough dog to handle, right?
She's an old maid.
Yeah, you know.
Oh, yeah, mine.
You know a little something about that.
Mine's beyond that. Mine's blind and can't hear, and she's got a rough life right now because she's got 2 kids that chase her around with mini golf clubs.
Yeah, my son, Luca, just chases her around now with golf clubs,
Yeah, mine
and he'll get a remote and we'll just start swinging it at her and stuff, and she doesn't take too kindly to that.
My youngest thinks it's fun to just like kick.
Yeah,
Kick at her.
That's starting to get there.
Yeah.
She comes over to Luca in the mornings and just like wants to kiss him, right? Give him some loving, and he just goes, whoop.
Yep.
It's like, all right.
The other day,
Full wind up.
just to put this into context of what BK's talking about, the other day, she's like 14 years old. She's like blind as a bat. She
Your dog?
can't hear. Yeah, our dog, not the kid.
I was like, damn, man, you want to tell us something?
No, I'd be a lot more in a different situation probably. But the other day I was cooking and I heard the dog barking. I'm like, where the hell? And then, you get that as a parent, that eerie silence in your house. Like, okay, what the hell's happening? I went into my daughter's room. They had the door closed and locked, and my dog was pinned in the back corner with both girls standing over there, her screaming at the top of their lungs. I felt awful for the dog. I had to pick her up and move her to another room.
So our dog, the problem that we're dealing with right now is that she really likes to poop and pee all over the place.
Oh, nice.
It's a significant issue.
That's her getting back at you for having a kid.
Yeah. So, like, people will be like, you got to take her out before. Yeah, we do. It's none of that. It's her. It's a behavioral issue. So we decided, you know what? We're going with diapers. It's time. She's got to start wearing diapers around the house.
No.
We did the diapers. So
I didn't know that was a thing for
Oh,
you.
man, that's an awful thing, too, because, like, the maintenance on that is ridiculous.
yeah, we decided she's going to be wearing diapers around the house, and it is what it is. And, hey, listen, if you're going to keep peeing everywhere, like, we got to
Did she
clean
do that
it up.
prior to the kid?
Occasionally, it was an issue at time. It was rare.
Yeah.
It was rarely an issue, but it happened occasionally. And now, like, for the last couple of weeks, it's been a real problem. Like, we come home and we kind of expect she probably peed somewhere. So with Luca, like, he crawls around everywhere. And you clean it up, and, like, hey, Dago, there was a pee stain there. Hopefully everything's good, you know?
Yeah.
So
My daughter's picked up dog poop before and put it in her mouth. I'm like, what the hell is happening right now?
So I get home yesterday, and she had her diaper on. Here's the problem, Alex. She pooped. The diaper has a hole for her tail, but it's not quite big enough for the poop.
Yeah. And so it's just mushing into her and coming out? When you said
It was, Alex, my dog is 9 pounds. It's the single biggest poop I've ever seen.
Well, of
her
course,
lay.
because it was smushed into it. And then you got to wash and get it out of the fur? Dude.
What
I'd let the dog just poop everywhere.
Do? Like, I don't know what to do at this point.
Have you taken it to the vet? Like, is there something wrong with her? To
No,
why
she's fine.
She's just doing it?
Yeah.
How old is
she's
she?
just bad.
How old is she?
I know
Like,
BK's
almost
getting
9.
frustrated.
Dude, I don't know what you do, because not only that's essentially like having 2 kids, because now you got 2 diapers to
Yeah.
change, and that one's a lot worse because at least for a baby,
the
you
diaper
can clean it.
appears to be for basically everything else other than the poop yesterday. Like, she doesn't.
Not that
She has
effective.
not yet peed in the diaper. It's having the
Wait,
desired effect
does
for
she
that.
roam around the house while you guys are away?
Yeah, I was gonna say, why
Is
don't
she-
you
put her
why
in
don't
a
you
kennel?
kennel?
Like, not a
It's
kennel, a
it's
cage.
too much social anxiety.
Can
Like,
you
she gets
gate
it's
her off
bad.
into a room? Like, do you have is there like only one entrance to the kitchen that you could put a gate so she only stays in
Open
there?
floor plan.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, and you got hardwood, or is it carpet throughout the house?
Hardwood, but we have carpet.
Like in the rooms? I was gonna say, because you could put her in a room and just put a gate, so it's at least it's just designated to one room.
It's bad,
Or you
man.
start training for puppy pads.
We never had that issue with our dog. But we put him
Yeah.
in a cage, but he loved it. Like, we'd say, "Hey, buddy, go to your cage." He'd go, "Oh, nice, sweet. It's time
We
for a
tried
nap."
that, and it was bad.
Yeah, I mean, our 14-year-old does it also. But I don't think she can control it anymore. She's at the point where, and I know it sounds awful, but like we seriously have to take her to the vet and find out, like, do we need to put her down, because is she in pain? But she goes in the basement and does it, and so like it sucks. But at least I know it's in one area that I clean before the kids go down there. With a house like that where Luca's going everywhere, that's awful.
So my text line said, BK, you obviously need to get a dog trainer because you don't know what you're doing, which makes it even more terrifying because you have a child. First of all, get
all the way out of here.
second of all, we've tried dog training.
Yeah, didn't use the dog trainer that we
We've
used.
done dog training multiple times.
Yeah. Belle graduated from the dog training class. I got a
And she
picture
does,
of it.
like, there are times when it goes really well. Hey, man, first of all,
I graduated
stay in
high
your
school. I
lane
forgot
and
a lot of
back
stuff.
off, buddy.
Nice.
Listen, man, if you want to question
Yeah.
me like as a dog parent, that's totally cool. Questioning me as an actual parent, I will not accept.
Only pieces of what criticize people's parenting.
Hey, man, I was wondering if you had any.
No, I mean, dude, unfortunately, that's why I asked if something was wrong with her.
experience? Not that we're aware of. We've got a
would-
vet appointment coming up.
I would
so.
say, though, that like the one thing, because I wouldn't do doggy diapers because that seems awful on top of having a kid to worry about.
It ain't
I
fun.
would try and do the puppy pads to where, like, if she's going in the house, at least train her to go on this pad. But, dude, I don't know, man. I don't envy you in that scenario because that's
It ain't
rough.
fun. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes, we're going to get to a game of more likely to happen. You give us 2 scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely here on 101 ESPN. But next, what can be learned from the failures of last year's Cardinals and this year's Cubs? Are there any similarities between the two? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friend Tracy Bibb, my insurance agent Tracy Bibb. She's both of those things because she takes care of the Ferrario family with our car, with our home insurance, and I love the availability of Tracy Bibb. You hear us talk about it all the time about athletes. You know, the best ability is availability. I'd say the exact same thing about your insurance agent, because if something goes wrong with your car, if something goes wrong with your house, flooding was a major problem for a lot of people last week with all of that rain. You got to have somebody who's available for you, and that's Tracy Bibb. Her motto with her team is it's not a matter of if something happens, it's when something happens, and when it does, she's available for you. So give Tracy a call today. Tell her you heard me talk about it on 101 ESPN. She will walk you through the entire process, a free, non-committal quote, super simple. She'll even cancel your current insurance so you can get switched over with the Bibb agency. 314-328-4260. That's 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So the Cardinals failed spectacularly last year. A lot of people were considering them somewhere in that like 84 to 90 win range. That was the expectation going into the season. But we all saw, fragile type of a team, a little thin, probably not a real contender, but, could maybe make it to the playoffs. This year, the same exact thing has happened to the Chicago Cubs, where you went into the season and people like T-Bone were considering the Cubs to be the favorite to win the National League Central. They had some good players. You heard some of the name recognition, like stars of yesteryear, Dansby Swanson. They've got Cody Bellinger back this season. And it appeared that they had a pretty good rotation. And it just hasn't worked. Now, they didn't fall out of it the way that the Cardinals did last year. They're 5 games under 500. The Cardinals were an abomination last season. But they failed. And they have already started telling everybody around the National League, hey, we're around Major League Baseball, we're sellers. We're sellers at this year's deadline. There's 10 games out of the divisional race right now. They're one of the very few teams that is legitimately out of it at the deadline. In your guys' opinion, is there any kind of a consistent theme, any kind of similarities between what happened last year to the Cardinals and what has happened this year to the Cubs, and why those respective builds failed in this division?
I mean, the one that comes to mind for me is bullpen. If I'm not mistaken, Chicago Cubs bullpen has blown pretty much every opportunity. It was a stat earlier in the season that they would have like 25 more wins if their bullpen could just close games down. So that would be the first trend, because last year your bullpen was a major reason why your team struggled, was because when you got the lead, you couldn't hold on to it. And it sure seems like Chicago Cubs this season's bullpen has imploded in front of them. The other one I would say is the core that you're building around, because when they signed Cody Bellinger, it felt like you were chasing what Cody Bellinger used to be and said, well, he'll be able to bring that MVP presence. You went out there and you brought in Dansby Swanson. You were chasing what he used to be. The core that you built around was, this sounds so mean, but a bunch of has-beens that you were hoping could get back to that same level. And last year it kind of felt that way for the Cardinals of who they were surrounding themselves around offensively. They were surrounding it around Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and Wilson Contreras. Now, Wilson's backed it up. Paul and Nolan haven't. But the core for the Cardinals are why they've turned it around this season, and I think the core for the Cubs is the reason why you're starting to see them falter.
Yeah, I do think bullpen is part of the conversation. The problem is like, I don't know if there's anything to learn from that, because we talk about it with bullpens all the time. They fluctuate so much. Like the Cardinals last year, you can look at their bullpen. I think there were serious questions about their bullpen going into last season. So it was kind of easy to see how that one fell apart. Cubs fell apart. But it's definitely possible the Cardinals, like, we like their bullpen now. Sure, they've got to add reinforcements to it. Mo hit on a lot of his offseason additions in the pen. It's totally possible it could have gone the other way, and the Cardinals are back to where they were in 2023. So bullpen for me is one of them. But again, I just don't think there's a lesson to be learned, because you have to just swing high for bullpen arms. The other one for me is I think it kind of ties into the Cubs a little bit, and it is just making sure that when you look and try and build what your floor is, like the Cardinals last year, they tried to build to where, like, their floor was, we hope we're a 75-win team, and then we can kind of upgrade at the deadline and get better. But the problem was like, you could see like how everything could go wrong for them, and that the floor would not be that. And it was with the rotation, and it happened. Like, you questioned Adam Wainwright's age. You questioned, could Jack Flaherty be Jack Flaherty of old? They had Miles Michaelis that ended up having a down season, and like, you questioned what his ceiling was because he's a pitch to contact guy. And then when you look at the Chicago Cubs, and it's kind of that with their floor. Like, some of the guys that they're relying on, like Nico Horner, has never been a consistent big leaguer. He's been above league average twice so far in his career, and one of those was in 44 games in 2021. Michael Busch has been really good, but he's kind of a rookie for the Cubs. You look at some of the other guys that are in their lineup. Morel has not been a consistent hitter, I would say. He's been a good hitter, but he hasn't been a consistent hitter. To me, it's just too much fluctuation in their lineup, and they also fell victim to what the Cardinals have done in years past, which was they settled for that second tier in free agency and signed Dansby Swanson.
Bingo. That, to me, is what the lesson is from the Cubs and the Cardinals. It's settling. Saying, okay, this is enough. Because the Cubs could have gone out and done more this past offseason. They could have. They were involved in a lot of conversations. Like, they were one of the teams that was reportedly interested in Shohei Ohtani. Now, Ohtani probably was never going to be coming to the Chicago Cubs, but they were at least interested, right? And I think what we've seen from them in recent years is that they're just not going to spend to that degree. And I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me. They have all of the money you could possibly ask for. Coming off of that 2016 run, that core group of players, like you've seen, they've got the fan base that can support. They're in a massive market. They've got the TV, like everything you could want, they have it right now, money-wise. And yet they're seemingly not willing to invest at the top of the market. They'll see a shortstop market, and instead of going to get the best guy, they get Dansby Swanson. They'll look at this past year's offseason, and they'll be like, you know what? We could go out and get a couple of bullpen arms, couple of starters, really support this starting pitching and this pitching staff in general. We like Imanaga. We'll go get him. And we'll just kind of like piece things around the edges. Their biggest move this past offseason was a manager. That was the biggest move that they decided to make. They plunged into the market by going out and getting Craig Counsell, and then they said, we're good.
I mean, Imanaga was a pretty good move for them.
It worked out, but it wasn't a massive splash.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Like, you don't have to make a ton of splashes. Like, you need moves like that to be a good team, right? The Phillies this past offseason, getting Turnbull, man, that worked out for them. That bought them a lot of time for their rotation to come together, and now he becomes a bullpen arm for them. Like that, those kinds of moves are necessary for contending clubs. But you've also got to be able to go out there and make the big move. You got to go out there, and if you're the Phillies, bring back Aaron Nola on a massive contract extension, right? Go out there and make the move for JT Realmuto. Go out there and get Bryce Harper in free agency. Oh, we've got a good lineup. What if we added Nick Castellanos to it? Like, what if we continued to supplement this with Trey Turner, one of the best shortstops in the game right now? The Dodgers, oh, we've got a three-headed monster at the top of our lineup. What if Shohei Ohtani became available and we could just plop him into the mix? That, to me, is the lesson. Like, when you're going to go out there and you're going to spend a little bit of cash, don't just go to the mid-tier market. Don't go out there and buy that. Go out there and get the really good stuff. And then supplement it with accent pieces. Go out there and get your Shota Imanagas. Go out there and sign a bullpen arm like the Cardinals did this offseason. It hasn't worked out, but Go get Keenan Middleton and then throw a bunch of numbers at your bullpen the way that the Cardinals did. That stuff's necessary. But I think far too often we see these teams that are in this middle of the National League, especially the NL because the AL is a little tougher right now, just say, we'll be fine. We'll probably be able to piece that together at the deadline. Too many teams right now are saying, we'll get that at the deadline. And then you get to the deadline, you're 5 games out, and you're like, we're going to sell. We didn't make it there the way we were hoping for. And it just didn't work out for us. And I think that's a lesson to be learned from both the Cardinals last year and the Cubs this year. All right, coming up next, more likely to happen here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and I got to tell you about my friends over at Victory Men's Health. They're going to help you unlock your inner champion. They've done that for me. I went in there. This was about a month and a half ago now, and I asked them, hey, how can I go out there and maximize my workouts? Because I feel like I'm not getting as much as I would like to get out of them right now. They said, let's check your micronutrient levels. Let's see where you're at in your vitamins, all of that different stuff, potentially low testosterone. So I booked an appointment with them. It's super easy. VictoryMen'sHealth.com is the place where you can go to do that. Put in your name, email, phone number. Tell them a little bit about what you're trying to optimize for yourself. Went in there, got the appointment, came in about a week later, and they told me exactly what it was. I'm a little low on my vitamin B12. I'm a little low on my vitamin D. I needed a little bit of iron as well. They got me hooked up with supplements for all of that. It's making me feel so much better. They can do the same for you, whether it's low testosterone, if you've got some vitamin deficiencies, erectile dysfunction, maybe you just want some help with weight loss goals that you're struggling to be able to meet on your own. They can help you out with that. 4 great locations across the St. Louis area. Victory Men's Health can help you unlock your inner champion. Go to VictoryMen'sHealth.com. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You give us 2 scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely. Guys, what is more likely to happen? the Cardinals add a legitimate big right-handed bat, or they add a starting pitcher that you're excited about starting a game 2 of a playoff series. Big right-handed bat, starting pitcher that you're excited about starting a game 2 of a playoff
I don't know
series.
who that big right-handed bat is, so I'll say it's a player you're excited about because my hope is they get Eric Fetty. And I don't know if Eric Fetty gets people excited, but out of the list that Jim Bowden gave us earlier, Eric Fetty gets me excited. That's like acquiring Max Scherzer out of the list of names that Jim Bowden threw at us. So I'll say it's more likely you get a starting pitcher that you're excited about for game 2.
I think I'm going to go legit right-handed bat, and I'm having trouble figuring out who that is because they're not doing a Rooker trade, even though they probably should consider it. But when was the last time the Cardinals actually got me excited about the trade they did? You know, like
Jordan
23
Montgomery
they
was
sold.
exciting.
That was a really good trade.
He was a good trade. I don't know if he was exciting.
I was pumped because that was a legit upgrade over everything else you had.
I think people undersold how good Jordan Montgomery was.
I think it was hard to get excited about it.
By the way.
Yeah, they're regretting that one.
Because, like, he was viewed as a 3 across baseball. You know, it wasn't like, oh, my gosh, did you just see what the Cardinals did?
What is the biggest move? Because they, like, gave up, to be fair, the way that baseball valued him was, hey, Harrison Bader, who has a bum foot right now, probably going to play a month of baseball for you in September for the Yankees. That is the value of Jordan Montgomery. That's the going rate for him. So baseball didn't value him the way that I think they probably should have either. What's the biggest quote-unquote move that the Cardinals have made in recent memory at the deadline?
I mean,
Lackey?
Probably
Holiday?
14. He was.
I mean, Holiday was
2006.
But wasn't Lackey coming off of
7.
Tommy John? Like, he didn't even pitch the year they acquired him.
I think he did, right?
Oh, yeah, he did. Sorry.
Yeah, he
had
was good that year. That was 2014,
he had the weird
if I'm not
clause in
mistaken.
his contract because where he was like,
playing
hey,
the
we're
next
paying
year.
him league
Yeah, it was like $1
minimum.
million.
It's like, whoa, that's a steal.
I mean,
It probably
if
is
you're going,
Lackey.
I thought Holiday was bigger than Lackey when they pulled it off.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but that's going further back.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
saying,
Lackey was a big deal.
Let's say post-Holiday, because Holiday is like, that's a all-star MVP caliber type of player.
Because like they didn't do anything in like what year was they won 100 games? 15.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do anything that year at the deadline that I remember. That really sticks out in my head.
Their big offseason move that year was the Hayward thing.
Yeah, but I don't think they made a trade at the deadline because they were awesome. They knew they were probably a playoff team. I don't think they really added anything of significance. So I would probably say, yeah, the most recent one is probably Lackey because he was a big deal when they acquired him.
And I would say, like, Lackey was pretty comparable at that point in his career to, like, Jordan Montgomery. Innings eater.
Jordan Montgomery was big in my mind.
Lackey was like well-known, playoff success. Like
If you looked at ERA
viewed
over
as
the
a
course of their
2.
career, though, Montgomery had been better. Surprisingly enough.
I get it.
Didn't feel that way.
This
But
was
you're right. The playoff history. Lackey was probably the most similar to like Nate Eovaldi.
This was
the Cardinals were to acquire Nate Eovaldi this year.
Your rotation prior to Montgomery was Michaelis, Wainwright, Hudson, Quintana, and Steven Matz.
And Quintana throw out because he was also acquired at the deadline.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, so he was out of that one. I completely forgot about that. So it was Jack Flaherty because then the Jack Flaherty injuries throughout that. So that was your rotation. I mean, Montgomery coming to your team was the best pitcher on your roster, and then Jose Quintana performed
I think
as
it's
well.
more likely they had the bat. I don't know how. I don't know what it looks like, but I think it's more. I don't think that it's very likely at all that people are going to be excited about the number 2 starter. I'd be surprised. Alex, what do you got?
Guys, more likely to happen, Brendan Donovan plays more games at second base next season, or more likely to happen, a unnamed Cardinal on this roster now plays more games in the outfield?
So like Walker.
Yeah.
Oh, the latter. Yeah, I think Walker is going to play 140 games for you next year in the outfield.
Wow.
I think it's time. Like, next year is,
Sink or swim.
yeah, that's the year that it has to happen for him.
I agree. So I think I'll go more likely you see Walker there and gets more games in the outfield because I'm kind of with BK. Sink or swim time.
If
with
they trade
Walker.
Gorman, though, Donovan's everyday second baseman.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I question if this team will move Gorman. You know, we know how they love their assets. They collect assets and then they hoard them and never get rid of them until they're like, Carlson isn't actually. We open the box on Carlson. He's not valuable anymore. We'll sell him for like a penny.
Cardinals are like what I used to be with Pokemon cards. I'd spend all the money on and just keep them, and then I'd sell it at a garage sale for $20 and find out that I lost all my money.
Guys, more likely to happen. The Cardinals add 2 relievers at the trade deadline, one right-handed, one left-handed, or they don't add a starter and they rely on Andre Palante down the stretch.
The latter.
That one.
I think it's more
I think
likely.
they're
I think the way that happens is pretty easy. Fetty goes for more than we're expecting because the Rangers decide not to sell, so there's less starting pitching available at the deadline. Kikuchi ends up being somebody that is highly valued by a team like the Dodgers that just really needs an extra depth piece, and they've got more to offer from their minor leagues. And then the Cardinals decide, you know what, it's better for us to go with what we have than to get tied up with Quantrill, Gomber, or Eflin.
I think they're intertwined, too. I think if they don't get the starter, then they go get the righty and the lefty bullpen arm.
Agreed.
I just don't know if they're going to be willing to give up those kind of assets for those arms. I mean, you heard what Jim Bowden said about what the Royals gave up for Hunter Harvey. Quote, I almost fell out of my chair. I can't see them making an acquisition. By the way.
That was a lot to give up.
It was.
And some of these relievers are at least viewed better than what this guy was.
These are bidding wars for these guys, man, because you know what? You could never have enough in October? Enough bullpen arms. I think they'll get one. I can't see a scenario where they go get two, even though they need two.
I could see them getting two arms. It would be like Brebbia. It would be guys that you see, and on the surface, you're like, really, that's what they got? And then you look into it a little bit more, you're like, it actually makes sense. Pretty good moves. Probably pretty similar to the way that most people reacted to the Jordan Montgomery, Jose Quintana deadline. Whereas on the surface, you're like, really, that's what they got? When they got all these other names that were available. I think that was the Verlander Scherzer deadline, if I'm not mistaken, where you've got bam, bam. Frankie Montas was at that deadline as well. Just a lot of guys that are getting moved, and then they got two guys that are good. And I think that's probably what it would look like if they ended up getting the bullpen arms. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Get to a couple of these before we get to Chris Kerber on the other side. Guys, more likely to happen. This one comes from the 314. Matthew Joseph scores 20 goals, or Zach Bolduc scores 20 goals this season. That's a fun one.
I'll say Matthew Joseph because I don't know how many games Zach Bolduc is going to be playing for the Blues this year.
Joseph's career high is 13 from his rookie season.
And that was a fourth-line player for Tampa.
I'll say Matthew Joseph as well. Same reason.
That's kind of where I
think he gets significant ice time.
They've blocked Bolduc to where I don't know how he's getting on the roster and if he's going to play enough games to score 20 goals.
More likely to happen from the 314. Cards catch the Brewers or the Cards miss the playoffs? Did you see the news, man?
Yeah.
I feel Christian Yelich, it sounds like it's getting his back checked out. Might have to get back surgery. That's a big blow for the Brewers if that ends up being the case. I think it's more likely that they catch the Brewers. I disagree with Jim Bowden on that.
Yeah, the Yelich news really changes my mind because I don't think they could catch the Brewers, but if you take that bat out of the lineup, man, it's going to be tough unless they pull off some crazy move. And their GM was basically like, or was it their manager that basically said, like, what are we supposed to do? We have Vlad Jr., which is an odd thing to just throw out there. I still don't know if they catch the Brewers, though, man. Like, they got a tough schedule down the second half, and unless they make a big move at the deadline, I'm skeptical. So I'm going to say it's more likely they miss the playoffs.
I think I'm saying more likely they miss the playoffs. I do believe that Yelich injury is huge, and we'll see how the Brewers handle it. Guys, they've been dealing with 10 starters on the IL and still doing this, and their offense is actually more suitable to sustain this kind of an injury. Yeah. I think as you're seeing, hold on, let me turn around.
Yeah, no, you're still
listening to the Pirates. 5-0 in the 7th. I think as this series has shown for the Cardinals, they are vulnerable. And the reason I say that, and look, today was probably a scheduled loss. The reason I say is, one, your offense is not hitting again, and two, your bullpen has now shown holes, and they got to add a starter that we've been talking about since really the first month of the season. That's a lot for Mo to add that Mo doesn't do. Mo's not going to be the guy that's going to fill their 4 needs at the trade deadline. Right now, I'm leaning towards, until we see what the deadline looks like, I'm leaning towards more likely Cardinals miss the playoffs. That's
your pipeline if you're trying to upgrade in 4 different areas at the one deadline.
That's Alex East, T-Bone on BK. Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, next year on 101 ESPN.
Oh, it is Southern Glaze, so it's just not Glazer. Gotcha. Hey, listen, the summer heat is full upon us now. This is real simple. I've been telling you now for a few months. If you haven't called Classic Air Care to have them come out and make sure that you're maintaining your air conditioner unit, you're putting more stress on that unit than you need to. And when that happens, you're taking a chance of costly repairs. That's your choice. We've been warning you about this plenty. So here's the deal. If you're walking around, you start to hear that air conditioner fussing a little bit. Maybe you haven't changed that air filter, whatever it needs. You still got time. Call Classic Air Care. Go online at classicaircare.com. Set up an appointment, have them come out. Make sure that they're set for the rest of the heat of the summer. We haven't even begun the dog days of August. So get it done at Classic Air Care. And if by chance you need a repair, you can trust these folks. Go online, check them out, classicaircare.com, and look at the 4.8 Google rating they have and find out what people are saying. It's that simple. It's that honest, and that's why I'm telling you about it. So when you need a repair, think classicaircare.com. They've been making people comfortable since 1926.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals beat the Pirates yesterday 2-1, and Game 3 of their series is going on right now as they trail Pittsburgh 5-0 in the top of the 7th inning. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by the voice of the Blues. He's Chris Kerber here on 101 ESPN. Curbs, I appreciate the time as always. How was your vacation?
BK, it was fantastic. Thanks for asking. Actually, we've extended it a little bit here. I'm down in Louisville and in Lexington with Jeremy and Vinny from Southern Glazer and Todd Randall from Randall's Wine and Spirits. Of course, you know they've been great sponsors for us over the years at 101. And we just did yesterday a single barrel pick of Buffalo Trace. We're going to be releasing at Randall's in a little while. So we'll let everybody know about it when it's time through the station and all the proper channels. But been an awesome couple of days. And so we did a single barrel pick of Buffalo Trace and of Eagle Rare. So we've got some special stuff courtesy of these guys coming the fans' way in a little while.
Did you go to the distillery?
We did. We actually went out to the distillery. They arranged a great tour with Freddie Johnson, who's a third-generation employee of the distillery. He's got an amazing story of how his grandpa ended up working at Buffalo Trace. And so we literally, straight from the barrel, sampled the things, and we said, that's the barrel we want to sell to our sports fans in St. Louis. So it's coming. Hopefully within a few months we'll get it all figured out.
And you didn't get me a bottle of Eagle Rare. You didn't even send a text, Curbs. I would have thought of you. It would have been the first thought that came to mind for you.
He's lying.
Well, yeah, you know what, BK? We'll get you involved in this. I think we got some stories to tell here, so we got an opportunity for you.
A deal. Yeah. I'm in. I'm 100% in. All right, Curbs. Somebody that I'm excited to see this year is Jake Neighbors. There's a really good piece by Jeremy Rutherford the other day in The Athletic about, hey, Jake Neighbors, 27 goals a season ago, and the question now is, what's the encore look like? Is that going to be the regularity for Jake Neighbors? He's just 25-goal scorer. I'm curious, you got to watch this kid every single night last year. What are you expecting in year 2 of a full-time basis for Jake Neighbors at the NHL level?
Listen, here's my advice to people when it comes to Jake Neighbors. He had a hell of a year last year. I am a big fan. I see this guy as a future captain of the St. Louis Blues. I really do. He's got captain material. So at least let me put it that way so I don't step on anybody's toes. What I would tell people is, yes, he had 27 goals. We don't know what the ceiling is for him, right? So if you go into next season expecting 27 goals, I don't know that it happens. But does 20 goals happen? Does 22 goals happen? And does Does a potential Selke forward start to show, its wares? Does he stay net front and continue to show that battle? There is an old soul veteran approach to Jake Neighbors' youthful, young game in the NHL. And the one thing that proves to be successful game in, game out all the time is that approach. Like that, it's surefire. That approach works. And Jake Neighbors has it. So I believe that Jake Neighbors is gone. I read Jeremy's piece. So we know Jake Neighbors is gone. He's working on his game. He's working on that. I see nothing but pure upside. That doesn't mean that it's going to be hiccup-free. He's still a young player in the league. But there's nothing but upside to this young man's game.
Curbs, I'm sure most hockey players say the same thing that Jake Neighbors did, but BK and I talked about it earlier this week after that piece came out because we heard it from like 4 or 5 different young players going into the offseason about the main focus was to put on weight. Bolduca told us that at the end of the press conference. Neighbors said it in the piece. We heard Snuggerud and Dvorsky talk about it at prospect camp. The importance of putting on that muscle so that they don't get shoved off of the puck, I think, is part of the reason why Robert Thomas became the player he did last season.
Well, it is, but let me rephrase it a little bit. Like, I get honest, and I'm not no joke here, Alex. Like, it makes me cringe when I hear a young player say, "I got to put on weight." We got to put on weight. Now, I'm gonna give you one of the best examples I know of. Then the Phoenix Coyotes, right? They wanted Danny Briere to put on weight. They didn't think that his game. They thought he needed more size, more weight for his game, and when they did that. The extra weight actually slowed him down. It changed who he was, and it changed his game. And so you want the way I like to look at it, and I guess you could cut it down by saying, yeah, put on muscle, right? But you need hockey strength and hockey attitude. That's what you need. And what I've come to really learn over the years is hockey strength is very different for everybody. Hockey strength for Klim Kostin and his style of play and what the Blues are looking for him, to me, could be very different than the strength and muscle composition and whatever you need from Jordan Kyrou. Same with Robert Thomas. You can become Robert Thomas, do a whole lot of working out of the gym, put on a little bit more weight, and it actually makes you slower. And is that beneficial? No. So it's the type of muscle, it's how you're doing it. So to me, I kind of like to call it more, and I'm telling you, it is so different for every single player. But without a doubt, young players, Dalibor Dvorsky, young guys come in that have not moved into their man body yet. You still have to put on muscle. You still have to work out. So it is there, but I find that phrase to be very different for every single guy, right? Unless you're Vinny Sorrentino, who can hit the golf ball like 350 yards and sometimes to the left.
Chris Kerber is the voice of the Blues, and he's joining us here on 101 ESPN, and that was a reference that only Chris Kerber could pull off here on the show.
I have to Google it.
Well, some of Vinny's hockey friends are going to be texting him in a little bit, so we'll see.
Curbs, I wanted to ask you about a rule change that's taking place. It's in the KHL, but I would like to see it in the NHL as well. Players are no longer going to be allowed to skate the puck back into their own half of the ice in overtime starting this season. A second infraction of the rule would result in a minor penalty. So this is something they're legitimately going to be enforcing. Is this something you'd like to see in the NHL?
I'd like to see adopted as soon as this segment of this radio show is over.
Love it. Same.
I'm 100% with you. I think that, it's funny how you have to protect the game from the people in charge of it themselves. There's so many great things that have been done, whether going back to 04, 05 and how they cut down on the clutching and the grabbing, right? And things along those kind of lines and different changes. I mean, we can argue about how they protected the quarterback in the NFL. You can't touch receivers, good, bad, and different, how that all works. But and it's all related to this. Like, you still have to eye the game. Well, if you look at the history of overtime going to 4-on-4, then to 3-on-3, the shootout that was adopted, what it's meant, how little it really dictates. Go back, guys, and really, honestly, take the last 10 years, right? Eliminate the extra point for overtime, that kind of stuff, and look at the impact on the standings. It really is negligible. And so for me, you got to keep the excitement for the fans. That's the marketability of the game. Once you've crossed the red line, I even wouldn't mind a rule that says once you've entered the offensive zone, you can't leave the offensive zone 3-on-3. I think teams have done it for the most part.
3-on-3 has become a drag at times. So I'm all for a change like that, and I'm curious to see how it works.
Curbs, final one for me. And now that we've seen the dust settle pretty much in this offseason, barring some type of moves, how do you view the Western Conference? Do you feel like more teams got worse than got better?
No, I actually, Alex, view the Western Conference as a whole as probably having – I mean, I guess we just – 1 through 16, as we've seen. The Blues are going to have some things go the right way. I'd love to see Dalibor Dvorsky make this team. I'd love to see him get a year's worth of experience and growth and mistakes under his belt, so you don't have Dvorsky and Snuggerud doing it at the same time. So there's some things like that I'd like to see. And when you have young players coming in, it's going to cost you some games. But the Blues have a roster. They've got things that I think will be competitive for a playoff spot. Does it mean they're good enough to get there? That we don't know yet. I believe without a shredded out, they've got the goaltending to get them there, so that part's good. And I just looked throughout the Western Conference, Alex, and I see enough where I don't see so many teams that are so much better than the others that the others can't compete. So I'm looking for a lot of parity in the Western Conference this year, to be honest with you.
Chris Kerber is the voice of the Blues. The Blue season just around the corner, and you hear him each and every week right here on BK and Ferrario. Curbs, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again next week.
All right, BK. We'll find a way to find a bottle your direction.
That's what I'm talking about. I'll pay for it. I'm more than happy to spend my hard-earned money on a bottle. It's just getting Eagle Rare out here in St. Louis is not always the easiest thing to do. Appreciate the time, man.
All right, we'll find one for you guys. Have a good time.
It's Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues here on 101 ESPN. He's a man that always pays his debts. Speaking of debts, the Fastlane versus the Rizzuto show.
How many losses in the football pick'em has he not completed? T-Bone
Pick'em challenge is coming up soon.
We have a couple.
We do the one a month.
I only have one. Man, that's around the corner.
The first year we tried to do it every single week, and listen,
that was a lot.
It's too much. We realized these are too many challenges. There are 18 weeks of the NFL season, 17 games for each team, 18 weeks in the NFL season. It was too much.
I can't wait to come up with our new ones.
This Saturday, the Fastlane squaring off once again against the Rizzuto Show from 105.7 The Point. It'll be this year's Home Run Derby. The softball Home Run Derby is hosted by the O'Fallon Hoots at CarShield Field in O'Fallon, Missouri. Rick Ankiel is going to be a part of it. Pete Cosma is going to be a part of it. Brian Jordan is going to be a part of it. And they've all joined the station at some point over the last 24 hours or so. So you can check out those podcasts on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. And the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find that. GA tickets on sale right now for the Home Run Derby. They're just $15. It's all brought to you by Swiss Air Heating and Cooling, Faster House, and by Zwickle Light. For full information, check out 101ESPN.com. The Rewind is next here on 101 ESPN. Man, Chris Roycroft, 3 innings of work today, 1 hit allowed, 2 strikeouts, a walk, hit 99 on one of his pitches today. Overall, I think he was averaging like 96 on his fastball velo, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 97 was his average sinker today, which is up from 96 overall on the season.
Calm down over there.
That's roughly the only thing that I can tell you that was a positive from today's game for the St. Louis Cardinals. A bad one for Matthew Liberatore. He only gets through 3, ended up giving up 5 earned runs. Gio has pitched an inning. He was fine.
What's his average fastball so far?
92.
Because I would say everything I've seen has been like 91, 92.
Average fastball velo for him was he threw a 93, 93, 92, 92, and 91. So
92.
Right around 92 for the average. That's about what you expect out of Gio at this point.
2 walks for Dylan Carlson today.
It has not been a good day for the St. Louis Cardinals. They're down 5-0 right now against the Pirates. It's the top of the 8th inning. Bad game. Bad game overall for the Cardinals, and it served as yet another reminder. This team needs some right-handed production, man. They are desperately in need of legitimate right-handed hitting options in the lineup. I don't know if that's something you can do at this year's deadline. You'd like to, but I don't know if it's realistic. That, to me, is the biggest takeaway. Today was the right-handed bats. Yesterday was the relievers.
Yeah, I think you're seeing, as T-Bone said earlier, you're seeing the vulnerability of the Cardinals and the right-handed bat. I think you've got the trade chip to use in Nolan Gorman. I just don't know if you can use that trade chip right now at the deadline. That seems to be more of an off-season move. My concern is the Cardinals are going to focus on just the right-handed bat, and they're going to miss their other vulnerabilities. And even though the starting pitching has been good this season, I still think it's a vulnerable position. And then you've got the bullpen, and I'm worried that you upgrade right-handed hitting, and that's it.
If you stay tuned for another 5 minutes, you'll hear Matthew Tkachuk on with the Fast Lane. That's coming up here in just a little bit. Right now is your chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game for the Cardinals versus the Rangers. Next week's Bud Bash game features a limited edition Steve Klein bobblehead. If you are texter number 101 at 314-399-9646, and you have the correct answer to the following question, you are going home with that 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash for Cardinals versus the Rangers. Earlier today, I mentioned that my dog's having some issues. Where are the issues taking place? If you can have the correct answer to that question, your texture number 101, you're getting that 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you missed anything from today's show, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dive Tire and Auto Centers.
Over there, you can find our conversation with Jim Bowden, who basically said, you guys ain't getting a good starter. You'll find that at the podcast page. Fastlane coming up next here on 101 ESPN.